Hello, news from the front fans. Hi, this is Richard Jensen,
Hello, this is Jake Merriman.
and we are getting ready to talk you through a little film called Superman the Movie. Hope you like what you hear. First thing we see is the dedication to Jeffrey Unsworth, who was the film's cinematographer. Got his start in the 40s as an assistant cameraman with Michael Powell on Life and Death of Colonel Blimp, and this was his last film before he passed.
You know, the thing is, Richard, you're going to know a lot of this stuff that I'm going to have no background on. So it's a good thing you're here.
Thank you very much. There are advantages to being independent.
So the thing about this movie is I haven't seen it in many years, and I only remember just broad things. So seeing it again, I don't remember this opening at all. But it's a great way to come into it with the, kind of paying homage to the fact that it was a comic book.
Yeah, it sets up the universe beautifully, even though the Daily Planet is not the same Daily Planet we're going to see later on. But man, that is a nice looking model. I remember Donner saying in his commentary track, he wished he'd held on to that. It's a nice prop.
You know, interesting thing about Superman is the people who actually made Superman, the original comic book, writers who wrote Superman, never saw a lot of the money that it made. It all went to the comic book industry, and even though their names got credit, they didn't make any money off of it. So this whole franchise that's gone off since the 30s and 40s, they never got a piece of it while they were alive.
That is a damn shame. And you gotta give it up for these titles. These titles are just absolutely beautiful.
The Star Wars titles. You know, there was a whole, about 7 or 8 years after Star Wars, the first Star Wars came out, where, every title sequence in some fashion or another resembled it.
Actually, the interesting thing about these titles is they were developed by R. Greenberg and Associates in New York. They were an optical company that worked up there. And they had done the original teaser trailer, which was basically a plate of a plane flying through some clouds. And then they had the Superman logo with that same kind of imagery, that same kind of laser-like imagery. And Donna liked it so much, he said, "Why don't we guys use it for the opening sequence?" And there you go.
They look great. I mean, you don't see much of this anymore. You see the passion for titles that used to be around. They kind of somewhere in the 90s they lost it. Now it's just they just kind of throw it in underneath, But I think the last really good title sequence probably saw was Fight Club, where someone cared about it. Now it's just you just throw it in underneath all the action happening.
Even The Departed, which we saw last night, had kind of a very minimal title sequence. You just had you set up the whole backstory, and then you just had the title card.
Yeah. It's kind of a. And in a way, I see why. I'm sure people got over it, and a lot of times there was a lot of titles to a lot of Terrence Stamp.
Oh, Terrence Stamp! We love the Terrence Stamp.
Yeah, it's half the reason to just be watching any of these movies is just for him.
Even though he only appears in the first 5 minutes of this one.
That's all you need. That's all you need.
Basically, Terrence Stamp is like cayenne pepper.
What? How's that?
Because you can use him sparingly.
Oh man.
Okay.
So I'm I don't even remember this beginning with Marlon Brando that much at all, actually.
No, and interesting, of course, is the fact that basically Marlon Brando got paid, and I'm blanking on the exact money.
$3 million?
I think even more, maybe even 4 or 5 in the Jeffrey Unsworth's title.
Wow.
Yeah.
Overpaid.
No, he was the cinematographer. We like the cinematographer.
No. I was just going back to Brando.
Oh, right.
John Williams.
One of his best scores ever. Originally, at one point, Jerry Goldsmith was supposed to score the film, but scheduling issues apparently limited that.
John Williams, I'm not a really big fan of him, but these early ones, some of his bigger ones, this one I'm a big fan of. I have to admit, even though Mario Puzo. Right.
Mm-hmm. Mario Puzo actually wrote the original story for it, and apparently this was another attempt by the Salkinds to bring in the money. Basically said, hey, we got Mario Puzo doing this project, so we're serious. And of course, it should be noted that Tom Mankiewicz, whose title we just saw a minute ago pass by, is credited with the final shooting script.
Well, I wonder if there was any kind of like connection there with Brando. Just getting them together.
What do you mean?
No, I'm thinking of someone else.
Okay. No, Tom Mankiewicz, he's basically...
No, I was talking about Puzo.
Oh, Puzo. No, that was probably a coincidence.
That's kind of funny.
Oh, opening... Interesting thing, according to Donner on the commentary track, that is basically just a pan with oil in it that Les Bowie burnt on one of the Pinewood stages. And you got to remember, folks, this was about 78, 79. This is pre-digital stuff. All this stuff was hard negative in the camera.
And, and it looks so great. It looks so much better than, when you see digital, you just know it's digital. You see it as fake. It's like, oh, hey, there's a digital image. But when you see this, I really miss some practical filming. I really miss this style.
Yeah, that was actually... I remember John Boorman saying on his commentary track for Excalibur is when you see a camera trick, the eye is aware it's being tricked, but you don't know how, and that gives it a certain magic. Whereas if we see digital, immediately we flash on some guy in glasses sitting at a workstation.
Yeah, well, this is a great example here. In our heads, we know this is a model, but it doesn't have to be. You could easily suspend your disbelief that you're seeing a landscape. And just want to give a lot of credit for the new Superman movie and just keeping the style with the landscape the same.
Should be noted that the man responsible for the miniatures in this film was Derek Meddings, who had worked for years with Gary and Sylvia Anderson on Thunderbirds and Captain Scarlet, and also worked on a number of the late period James Bond films.
So, who's this guy? I feel like I've seen him before somewhere.
Oh, that would be Marlon Brando. And this was about the film where he started making the transition from icon to load. He's still in icon status, but he's heading towards the load.
Did he do really anything significant after this?
Well, I'm thinking, Apocalypse Now came out before this, right?
Yeah. This might be his last big hurrah before he fell off.
Of course, we may be wrong. Feel free to correct us if we are. Jack O'Halloran. Nod. Sarah Douglas. Play a later prominence in Superman 2.
Yeah, oh my gosh. You just gotta admire how powerful these actors are. Just inhabiting so much presence. Richard and I had a conversation earlier just about a lack of presence, or from my point of view, in the newer movie. And you just see these people; they're just standing there. They're not doing anything, but they are just inhabiting the weight and the power and the presence of these characters' godliness.
Mm-hmm. Interesting point also about the style of the dialogue we're hearing right now. Basically, what happened was when Tom Mankiewicz got his hands on the script, they basically wound up writing 3 different movies. For the first part of the movie, the Krypton period, it's a very stylized, very theatrical language. And then once we get to Smallville, it's kind of a bucolic coming-of-age thing. And then when we get into Metropolis, then we're suddenly into the rat-a-tat-tat, hits Girl Friday sort of style of dialogue writing.
That is so appropriate. And it's so appropriate. You really get to set apart, these characters from the rest of the world, which is what should happen. You really need to, create a separate reality and let them inhabit it and let them act it. And you don't see that kind of detail being put into movies, especially superhero movies or comic book movies anymore. There's really no attempt to distinguish the otherworldly, the icon heroes from the everyday people. Everybody goes for this really basic naturalism, which is like. And I know how you feel, Richard, but I got to give Brando credit here. He's really inhabit, just like in Apocalypse Now, in my opinion, that otherworldly godliness.
No, I've got nothing. Again, it's not so much Brando's talent; it's what he would do. He later did with it. Basically, there were films he would later do where he would and he would always pick and choose what films he would actually be good in. There's a story about Brando that basically, anytime he did a film, he would, at a certain point in the production, he'd do 2 takes. One take, he'd give it everything, and then another take, he'd just kind of coast by. And if the director chose the latter take, that was it. He was finished for the rest of the film. He just coast by. Oh God. This is, again, really great shot. Once again, Derek Menning's working his magic. And it's amazing. Again, a lot of the technicians who worked on this film also worked years ago with Stanley Kubrick on 2001.
I was just noticing you really have to applaud the designers for such a simple, elegant set. You know, very stark, very open, and that little hula hoop thing, containing him. It has all the power inhabited in it, but you don't need any kind of gaudy extra set pieces. You don't need to overdo it, which is, again, kind of what we do now, is like overdo it. Well, for the amount of money that this was shot for, it has far more impact.
Right. Should be noted that the production designer was John Barry, whose previous film that he worked on was the original Star Wars.
There you have it.
Exactly.
And the original Star Wars, far more compelling design than the new ones.
Point taken.
That's a different commentary.
Let's save that for another time. When I start drinking.
You're gonna need to.
Yeah.
I want to hear that commentary.
Yeah. Trevor Howard, ladies and gentlemen. Again, this is the Salkinds basically front-loading the film with famous actors because, again, it's financing reasons. That you get big stars, people will put more money in it. It should be noted that when the Salkinds started work on Superman back in the mid-'70s, it was picked up by Warner Brothers as a negative pickup, which means they would distribute the movie for a fee, but the Salkinds were basically responsible for being their own bank. This was actually very common in the 60s and 70s. Another producer who was famous for that was Joseph Levine, who would basically raise his own money and be his own bank, so he wouldn't have to deal with the studios.
The other side of getting icons to play these parts is you embody that other world. When people see icons on a film, they're elevated beyond the level of normalcy, and that's really, really what you want for the setup for Krypton. You want to see how powerful this is like Olympus. This is, the gods of Olympus right now, and you really want to inhabit the audience with that power. Richard, since you are far more familiar with the background and the design of this movie, I want you to talk to me about these costumes right now.
Well, the costumes are actually interesting. They're actually the same kind of material that they would use for their front projection plates. When they use front projection for backdrops for movies, which is basically where they would have the actors in front of a big white screen and then project the image on them. That's the same kind of technique Kubrick used in 2001 for the scenes with the apes. They basically shot background plates of Africa and then would put the apes or the people in the ape costumes in there. So this actual material that Brando and his and the other members of the Krypton Council are wearing are basically just these little black beads that when you put a light on them, just light up.
That's incredible. That's an incredible scene. Again, practical and not digital. Again, so much more compelling to the eye.
Again, that's the other thing too is because back then digital did not exist. I think the only person who was doing any sort of R&D in CGI at this point was Spielberg. I think they had actually attempted to do a couple CGI spaceships for Close Encounters.
Just one other thing I wanted to say about the costumes is I love the design. I love the justification of the design of having each member of the council have their own emblem. It actually kind of takes away from the kind of golden age cheese of having a big S on Superman's chest. It's actually a symbol that means something far more than the fact that it's the first letter of Superman.
Definitely one of the more. That's definitely a very clever bit.
And it just, it takes it beyond. It makes you take the movie a little more seriously. It makes you take Superman's character a little more seriously than you normally would if it was just a cheeseball comic flip. Like the early Superman TV show serials or the early Batman show. You didn't take that seriously.
Oh, well, let's not even get into the early Batman series. It's just, ooh.
Well, they were corny fluff for the sake of corny fluff, but this really distinguishes itself from that. Kind of like Star Trek, the first Star Trek movies distinguish itself from the series.
Yeah, although a case could be argued that they may have distinguished a little too much, but that's a side issue. Another commentary for another day.
Yeah.
Susanna York as... God, I'm blanking. What was Superman's mom's name?
I, too, am blanking.
Oh, and he's the comic book geek of the pair, folks, so if he's having trouble, we're both dropping the ball on that one.
I'm not as up on Superman or the history of Superman as others. Jor-El, of course, but is even in the comic books, his mom doesn't get as much call. It's all about his surrogate parents is really where the relationship is most important to him.
Mm-hmm. And the one thing I have to point out is I'm kind of disappointed that we never got to see the Krypton sequences in Superman Returns. What happened was, I guess Singer had shot the sequences, but apparently because of length issues, just couldn't get it into the film. And I'm kind of sorry. I would have liked to have seen his take on a ruined Krypton.
That's really I didn't know about that. That would have been great on DVD, but I would have much rather seen that than some of the stuff we actually had to see. And nothing against Superman Returns. I really, really enjoyed the movie, but there's some stuff that was a little more superfluous that could be used for that.
And we'll probably get into that later on in this commentary, since we will be comparing and contrasting Superman with the Superman Returns, which is legitimate considering the fact that basically Singer used this as the template for his movie. In fact, one thing I forgot to point out during the title sequence is basically when Singer did his title sequence, it was basically he had Kyle Cooper basically replicate that original title sequence, only they did it with 3D models as opposed to, funny little squiggles from the Oxford film.
Oh, wow. Check out that. Look at that. Oh, that is just too cool.
Very cool. But ultimately, this was actually originally not in the original theatrical cut. So... I think Donna cut it out. And it's a cool thing, but the thing is, it doesn't really play a part in the rest of the sequence. It's nice to have it back in, but it's something they probably could have gotten away, because basically we're going straight into Krypton getting blown the hell up.
So, a lot of people, Superman's powers seem kind of arbitrary, but, and I can't remember how much they go into this movie, but the whole key to his powers is that he... everybody on this world is kind of like humans on Earth, but because of the power the sun gave him when he's, compared to the red sun compared to the orange sun or the red star there, the orange sun of Earth, his powers are a lot more magnified there, and that's what sets him apart. So that's why he gets it's not like he's arbitrarily this like super strong, powerful guy. It's just when they feel the power of Earth's sun that keys into the source of their power.
This is a nice sequence. This is probably where Brando did earn his money. This nice little monologue where he's basically telling his son, I am sending you to Earth to take care of them, and this is what's going to happen. And the interesting thing is, this is why I really love the end of Superman Returns, and why I can justify Superman having a kid, because basically he ends up saying the same thing to his son. It's like now he's passing the torch on to it. And I got to admit, I was crying at the end of the thing for that particular reason.
That was emotional, but it brings up something, if you want to make the comparison, if you're bringing up Superman's son, the issue, though, with that is that you're really, really messing with the iconography of the comic, because that never happened in the comic. That was completely made up, and it for one thing, it showed kind of a lack of respect for the comic, but for the other thing, it really messes with Superman the icon, and just makes it Superman the character. And the part of the power of these comic book movies are the fact that these people are icons. They're the modern mythology. And you're killing the mythology, and it takes the power away from the story when you do that.
I'm just going to be interested in seeing if they do decide to go ahead with the sequel, how that whole thing's going to play out. Because while it is kind of messing with the iconography of it, does set up an interesting dramatic dilemma for the guy too, because what happens if somebody steals Superman's son? Because you can't hurt Superman physically, and there's only so much kryptonite in the world. But this, if you hurt his son, that could kill him.
What really needs to happen in the next movie, which won't probably, but is kill off Lois's husband and kill off Superman's son.
Oh,
And, well, I mean, you're setting yourself up for a really, really heavy level of tragedy, which would be very powerful to watch. But it realigns kind of the power of the myth, which, you know, Bryan Singer, in all the amazing things he did right with that movie, kind of undermined.
well, I wouldn't go as far as to kill them, but that's me. I'm a sentimental old bastard. Oh yeah. Again, practical effects, beautifully designed by John Barry. Again, great Red Sun done by Les Bowie. But and this is just a great shot. I'm still trying to figure out how they did that shot, because there are no I literally can't see any wire. Well, not in this shot, but in the shot coming up where we see it going through the glass. Because see, you don't see any wires anywhere, and then suddenly it's just nice straight level, and bam.
That's really impressive. That's really cool.
Once again, old school, not one digital effect, because they just didn't have the technology back then.
You know, and thank goodness, really, in a way. Like, we're never going to see anything like this again, you know.
Well, unless some filmmaker actually decides to go to a studio and say, yeah, I want to make a big budget movie, but I don't want to use digital effects. And I'm not trying to poo-poo digital anyway, because it's a great tool if used properly. I mean, there's stuff in the Lord of the Rings movies that Peter Jackson did that there's no way you could do non-digitally.
Well, and I was going to use that as an example. Peter Jackson really was smart about keeping the line between digital and practical. It probably held the best line for any big budget kind of effects oriented movie, you know, because so many of the set pieces were miniatures as opposed to making it all digital, and he really kept the limit. It made a much more beautiful film.
Exactly. Oh, there goes. Ooh, that's gotta hurt.
The silhouette on their faces with the costumes like brightly lit is just beautiful. It is just an amazing image.
But man, it must have been, again, it's one of those things, must have been a bitch to shoot, because you've got them on gimbals, you got things flying around everywhere, and there's some major actors on that thing. I mean, can you imagine if Brando had gotten injured during that thing?
Oh man, look at that. Look at them falling.
Oh yeah.
So great.
And up with the Williams score.
Oh, what a powerful shot. Just everyone falling into oblivion, into like, you know, and they're taking their time with it too. You know. Well, there's a kind of an unfortunate tradition of sound and explosions in space when neither one of those things would actually happen.
But again, there's that argument about there shouldn't be space sound in space. But what are you gonna do? It was the 70s, and I should point out, by the way, I think I mentioned this earlier. These images in outer space with the nebulas, that was actually done by Oxford Scientific Film, who actually have been working for years doing images like that for film. They actually, I want to say they actually started with 2001, but I think that might have been just a separate unit that Kubrick set up.
You know everything, Richard. That's insane. That's awesome.
And there we go. Yeah, but it's actually very interesting stuff. I guess they would basically just take different chemicals and show under like this little sliver of glass, and then just film it under a microscope.
It is so much more fun to watch. Oh, look at that. Yeah, it's so much more fun to watch, too. You kind of get layers, dimensions, and it's just, you know, a lot more interesting visually than you know, just a, you know, kind of flat, computer constructed. I mean, and I know it kind of coming off as like, wow, old school for old school's sake, new things suck. And they don't. I don't think they do, but just everything in its place.
We are coming off like a pair of old fart Luddites, aren't we?
Yeah, it's fair, though. I mean, but, you know, it's not too many people can learn from the past and use it to enhance the stuff going on now. You know, again, I'm with you. I'm not saying digital's bad. I think it's amazing when you use it right, but people just use it as a fallback instead of, you know, really.
Two words, Van Helsing.
Oh, yeah, no kidding. Well, it's just the film school. The film school problem is that movie. People are taught how to shoot a movie, but people aren't told how to tell a story or to use their creative instincts. Movies aren't nearly as creative as they used to be, and I blame film school because that's not a part of the training. That's not part of the. They're just trained to make MTV videos.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing that always got me about Sky Captain and the World of Tomorrow is technically it was beautifully set up, but the script wasn't quite there yet, and because basically the guy who made it, Kerry Corrin, wasn't really trained as a writer. He was trained mostly as, animation, digital effects. I mean, it's not as bad a script as I've seen for other things, but it's one of those things where you wish he had got, okay, I'm going to toot my own horn. 6 weeks with that script, I would have made it sing.
Yeah, but, you could say that about a lot of movies out there, Richard. There's a lot of it, but it's not even the director's fault. People just don't care about scripts in Hollywood. Big budget movies do not concern themselves with the scripts, with acting, with shooting, with creative storytelling, with telling story. Period. It's just what looks kind of neat to the broadest amount of people. And God bless Bryan Singer for being able to bridge that gap and actually shoot a movie beautifully.
There's a shot you wouldn't see shot today because the right-wing media over it, they'd be like, oh, well, they're encouraging pedophiles now.
Yeah, it was kiddie porn. Yeah,
sure.
Exactly.
And we almost forgot to point out that's Glenn Ford and Phyllis Thaxter as Ma and Pa Kent. And sadly, by the way, as we record this a couple months ago, we actually lost Glenn Ford at age 90.
Man, he's terrific in this. He's, they're really, really, really important characters. I mean, they're as important as any other primary in this movie, because the whole thing with Superman, the reason Superman is who he is because of how he was raised. I mean, if it wasn't for Mom and Pa Kent, here's this person with almost infinite amount of powers, especially compared to anybody else, who could do anything in the wrong hands, or even in the slightly wrong hands, he could just become, just like a world dictator. But it's because of how he was raised by two genuinely good people. Mm-hmm. So you really, really have to set these people up as like the best human beings on the planet, right. and both of them just really inhabit it.
Again, that's the difference between his opposite Batman, which Batman was basically the slightly psychotic urban dweller whose parents were killed at an early age, and Superman is the shiny coin. He's the nice kid who basically grew up in the Midwest with strong Midwestern values. And, of course, people think, well, because we're liberals, we're going to put poo-poo on it. And actually, I'm not. We could use strong Midwestern values right now. We really could. Not the psychotic, anti-gay Midwestern values, but, the just decency and honest Midwestern values.
Yeah, decency is definitely on a decline in this country, and it has nothing to do, it's like people claim decency or family values, but it's not actually having any values. And this comes back again, and I'm going to hit this probably the whole movie, but, the mythology of Superman and Batman, the mythology, you basically Apollo and Dionysus. So, Superman's the new Apollo, and so he's the force of structure and goodness and everything solid, but...
I got to say a few words very quickly. That's Jeff East, by the way, who plays the young Clark Kent. According to Donna, he did very good work in the film, but the problem was he ended up getting redubbed by Christopher Reeve himself. And we're going to hang on a moment because Jake is getting a phone call, and I don't know how to pause this thing, so I'm just going to vamp for a minute. And Sorry about that. That's all right. And basically, again, it should be pointed out that a lot of these sequences were actually shot not in America in the Midwest, but actually in Canada. Again, this was one of those things, again, budgetary issue, but again, John Barry, brilliant production designer, managed to make it look like the Midwest.
Was it for money?
Yeah, I mean, again, we're talking about the Salkinds were basically raising their own funds, so anytime you can find a way to cut costs, you cut costs. And the interesting thing is, I'm blanking on where exactly in Canada this was shot, but this was actually shot near where Margot Kidder grew up. She's originally... Apparently, I guess there was a restaurant near here where one time Richard Donner and Gene Hackman and Kidder were having lunch one day, and Hackman's wondering, well, does anybody know where the restroom is? And Kidda says, "Oh, you just go down that door, take a left." And he said, "How do you know?" He said, "Because I worked there for 3 years as a waitress." Interesting shot using an air cannon.
That was a great shot. That was amazing. Simple, one shot, one frame, just like boom, kick gone. Oh wow.
And of course, here we go again. And this is basically him. Oh, there, and that is Lois Nell, by the way, who was the original Lois Lane, one of the Lois Lanes in the Adventures of Superman 50s TV series. She was also had a brief cameo appearance in Superman Returns.
I'm surprised we didn't see Margot Kidder in Superman Returns.
Well, maybe she wasn't available, wasn't interested. I don't know the story behind that one. Oh. Again, that was one of those things that required split-second timing.
Margot Kidder made a comment where she saw an early cut of the film and just kind of compared the two Supermans and, Christopher Reeves to the new guy. I'm blanking on his name.
Brandon Routh.
Yeah, and just commented out, it wasn't that bad. It's going to be hard because he doesn't look as much like Superman as Christopher Reeve did, and I think that's a really, really good point.
Should also mention that, by the way, the man playing Lois Lane's father was Kirk Allen, who was also in the original, I think, the movie Serial, right?
You'd known before I would.
All right. And, of course, a little trivia bit, that song they're playing, Rock Around the Clock, was also used in Blackboard Jungle, which also starred Glenn Ford. Yes, thank you. I am a trivia god.
You are my king. Amazing.
Mm.
I love the Clark's wig there.
Again, you're right. Just the little beginnings of the spit curl.
And I just really appreciate certain things. They're setting up Lana Lang, to bring her back in 3, and they're setting up. Back then they were, except for kind of 3 and 4, but they were really paying attention to the myth and keeping everything in line with the comic to tell the same story the comic told, only in the way that the movie can tell it.
Mm-hmm. And there's Glenn Ford. Oh God, this is a great scene. Just simple, and again, he's got that. Not only is he a good actor, he's got that great kind of 50s look. He's got that. He looks like he'd be wearing a suit and tie and he's standing outside of a business building. He'd be. Oh, I don't know. It's just he just looks the era so beautifully.
That last shot with them kind of in the distance, that's something you also never see. You only see headshots of people anymore. You never see the wide spectrum with the people in it, unless you're just setting up the scene to show where they are, which is very basic. But that was a really beautiful shot.
That was actually one of the problems I had with Mission Impossible 3 this summer, is the fact that Abrams, when he directed the movie, shot a lot of it in really medium to close up. And again, that's got to be TV trained. Again, I think that's something, because I think most people who are directors now grew up watching movies on TV, and of course TV always cuts and trims the picture, because if you got a film that's in a nice 2:3:5 to 1 aspect ratio and you trim it, you basically all you see are close-ups, so they don't know how to set up long master shots.
And again, I go back to blaming film school, because they don't composition like that is not hit nearly as hard, and you can tell, because there's a whole generation where compositions just like almost disappeared from movies these days.
This is true. True. I mean, there's still some people working it. I mean, Jake and I saw The Departed last night, and again, beautifully composed work. But then that's Scorsese. He's old school.
Yeah, he's pre-film school era. He's not. He was.
Well, not pre-film school. The guy was the first vanguard of the film school.
Yeah, but like the era of film school, the modern incarnation of it in the last 20 years or so. That's what I'm talking about. Like, back then they were defining film school. They were defining what it was, and now it's just streamlined into MTV Video Directors.
Right. It's almost like an MBA program almost. Oh God, I love this shot. That's just. And again, up with the music, very soft, very gentle. Mm-hmm.
I have the hardest time with John Williams anymore. I've had the hardest time with him for a long time, but
this one worked.
I gotta say, I have a spot in my heart for this.
And again, I have to make a quick technical note. Basically, the church you see in the background, going to see in the background in the shot for a moment, is actually a very large miniature that was shot to look far away. So it has that kind of gives it's and again the whole and the Italian you saw in the back, that's actually large size models again built by John Barry. So basically, what you have here is just giving it kind of this Norman Rockwell look. And once again, Jake's getting another phone call.
The trouble in paradise is I actually can't turn off the ringer. So.
Oh well. Anybody?
We can just ignore. Actually, go on, Richard.
Okay, I think I can vamp for a minute while Jake takes this call. As again, folks, we're recording this live, and we don't know how to stop this thing. So basically, this train's just gonna run. I know I'm pausing. I'm sorry. I'm waiting for Jake to come back. Let's see. What else can I say about this? We're going to have a gap here for a minute. I'm trying to think of what next to say. Again, I guess I can talk a little bit about the final screenwriter who worked on the project was Tom Mankiewicz. Originally, the script was given a first draft by Mario Puzo, and then the Salkinds brought in a bunch of other writers, including Robert Benton and the Newmans. But basically, Donner was very unhappy with that original script. He felt it was too campy. There was actually one scene in the original draft where Superman met Kojak. They were going to hire Telly Savalas for the day, and he basically said, "No, we got to do this right." So he basically brought in Tom Mankiewicz, who is like a second generation screenwriter. His father was of course Joe Mankiewicz, who was famous for Guys and Dolls, All About Eve, number of Academy Award winning films. And Tom had actually made a good career himself. He had actually written a couple of the major Bond films, including Live and Let Die, and I'm trying to remember what the other one was. The one in Vegas. Not Man with a Golden Arm. The one with Bambi and I'm sorry, I'm blanking. But anyway, Mankiewicz came in and he basically wrote the last draft to Donner's specifications, and he basically tried to ground it in more realism. He was also, of course, responsible for Lex Luthor and Otis, but that's going to be later on in the track we'll talk about. And here we find Mr. Superman himself is about to we see young Clark discovering the thing that is going to help him become Superman. That will allow him to build the Fortress of Solitude. I'm starting to feel a little more sympathetic to most directors who do commentaries on their own work, because this is actually hard right now. I wish I'd blocked this out better. But again, as I said, we're recording this live. We don't know how to stop this, so you're going to have this kind of odd little gap. Scene coming up, again, this scene coming up is basically where she's getting breakfast, and you're going to see in considerable prominence a Cheerios box. That's because, again, the Salkinds made deals with everyone. Not like they get $100,000 for a Casio ad. In this case, I think they got like maybe $150,000 to put a Cheerios box up. So that's why the Cheerios box is going to be so well framed. Again, I'm not entirely sure if Cheerios was around in the 50s. I'm sure somebody will make a comment on put in the comment level on the blog about whether Cheerios were around in the 50s. And then we're getting to the cornfield sequence. This was they actually grew their own wheat for this. They actually made their own cornfield, and they actually grew their own wheat. Jake, welcome back. Yeah. Thank God, I'm dying out here alone. I need somebody to work off of.
No, you're doing great. I'm sure everything you said was awesome. I'm just sad I'm getting to miss this. Like I said, Richard, I haven't seen this movie in years. I just remember the broad strokes, but this movie is incredible, and I wish I actually would have watched it before we decided to do a commentary track so I can kind of focus on it. Look at that! Oh my gosh, I'm just gonna be like fawning over it. Just most of the movie was like, wow, that's
Don't
great.
worry, there's going to be plenty for you to complain about. Interesting thing, that one little track you saw, that one little path there, that's the only path anybody could walk on because they didn't want to crush down the wheat because they're going to need it for the last part of the shot.
Attention to detail.
You gotta love it. And
The whole landscape, the whole background, they just get the whole world in that shot. That it just kind of reminds me of Leone in a way, how he inhabited so much of the landscape into all of his shots. It was so important to him that, the landscape was often a character in the movie. And you kind of see this happening with this second act of the film,
Yeah, again, I think a lot of it is very Norman Rockwell, very Andrew Wyeth, American Primitives. It has that look. Again, we're establishing his roots. He is from the Midwest, strong Midwestern values.
And that's, important. And just carrying these different worlds and creating these different worlds and separating these different worlds and drawing attention to them builds such a framework around the tension that comes up later on when it's him in the modern times against, you're seeing, basically we're seeing this journey through time. We're seeing, like, the kind of Greek era, times. And
here comes, this is easily one of the best shots in the movie right here, where they do, it's like they do, I think they do a pull in, I remember Donna talking about this on the track, but it's like the camera is doing two different things at once.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm kind of dumbfounded right now. Look at that.
And up we go as we leave the Midwest and head for the North Pole. And it should be pointed out that except for these exterior plate sequences, if not all of the Fortress of Solitude in North Pole sequences were shot on the 007 stage at Pinewood Studios.
North Pole or South Pole? Okay.
I'm thinking North Pole.
Okay, I thought it was South Pole for some reason.
I may be wrong. It's been a few months since I've seen the film myself, and I don't think they define it properly in the movie.
Yeah, I think in the comic book, but I might be crazy. I might just be backwards right now, which is entirely possible. It's weird that they, with these movies, as far as I can remember, they don't really get too hard into the physics of all the Kryptonian stuff, of the Fortress of Solitude or any of that. But they really just went that way with the new one when they're talking about the crystals and the property of crystals and how they work, which was a really, really, really neat twist on it.
Again, these were matte paintings done by Les Bowie and the incredible effects people at Pinewood. And Les Bowie was one of those guys who's been around for years. He worked on Kubrick's 2001. He also worked on a number of the old Hammer films, the old Hammer Dracula films with Christopher Lee. Excuse me. Pizza's coming back on me. But I just love that show.
You can kind of see the hint of the Fortress of Solitude there. You can kind of see it on the background, just kind of like making its way through. I miss Matt. Again, I'm going to sound like the guy, oh, yeah, it was so much better Once Upon a Time, but the matte paintings.
Once upon a time, we used to shoot each element separately and then put them through a matte printer. We had squiggly lines, we had an alignment, and we liked it. Damn it, you young whippersnappers.
It's kind of true in this case, though. Yeah, again, digital backgrounds, you see just a digital background, but this, you can suspend your disbelief. And I saw Tron recently for the first time in years at a midnight showing, and man, that was neat looking.
Oh, of course, it should be noted that Tron also had its share of CGI imagery, but it kind of fit because it does. It's in a computer. Oh, and here we go. Derek Meddings working his magic.
Boiling water. Always fun.
Boiling water, always fun.
Do you know, is that foam?
I'm not sure what exactly they used for that. I don't know if it was foam or I might have been fiberglass now that I'm thinking of it.
Nice.
And again, Jeff East, he basically did good work, but I guess the producers wanted a better connection, so they basically had Christopher Reeve redub him.
Wait, they dubbed his voice?
Yeah, his whole voice was actually redubbed by Christopher Reeve.
Oh, did you? If you mentioned that earlier, I missed it. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
hardcore.
It was, and I think, and it kind of broke Donner's heart because he said East did such a beautiful job in the film too.
Wow, that must him and Darth Maul. Huh?
Yeah.
Have we seen anything from that guy ever since?
I actually haven't. I'll have to check the Internet Movie Database later after this because I want to kind of see if he has done. I don't think he's done anything since.
You kind of, this is one of those things you sort of have to suspend your disbelief. Like, how did you know to throw the thing into the water? How did he know all that? Was that something just ingrained in him, or?
But you know what? It's a movie. We can. That's what's commonly what Hitchcock used to call a refrigerator problem. You basically see the movie, you go out with friends, you talk for a minute. Little bit. You go home, you get a snack out. You're hungry, you're going to get a snack. You open the refrigerator and you go, hey, wait a minute.
Yeah, we're going to have a pretty big refrigerator problem. We're going to have we're going to have a cooling unit problem by the end of this movie, though.
Oh, yeah. We'll get there, but not. Let's try to stay on the positive right now.
Try to set up the tension.
Oh, right. You're trying.
The dilemma. See, the thing is, and we'll get into it later, but I have a very, very... The reason I haven't seen this movie in so long, and, it's too bad that I've been such a snob about it, is I have a really serious, huge rant about the ending of this movie
which we'll get to when we get there.
Well, it's now something I actually have named called the Superman effect, which is... Well, yeah, we'll get to that anyway.
Yeah.
But still, that's you wouldn't. I can't get over it. You would never see this again. You would never see a director take their time with all this, setting this up. This if Michael Bay cut the whole sequence with this whole last 5-6 minutes would have been done in 20 seconds.
Mm-hmm, exactly. Again, but you have to take this in a grain of salt, folks. We both hate Michael Bay. Michael Bay is the devil. If you take nothing else away from this commentary track, please take away that Michael Bay is the devil.
Check out that effect.
Oh, very nice, very nice. And again, I have to admit, I've been kind of anti-Brando over the last few years, but I have to admit, I really do like him in this.
Well, when he gives a shit, you can tell he's one of those guys that rarely did. But when he gave a shit, I mean, honestly, more than likely he's phoning it in for all this, but he can get away with that with something like this. It's just like be a powerful badass. All right, I'll be a powerful badass.
Yeah, and again, it's one of those things where I remember what turned me off of Brando years ago was hearing how he would never learn his lines because he would always, just put them down on pieces of paper on the set. For years, I attributed that to just laziness because that was actually something that was ingrained in us in acting. When I was taking it back at SOU with Brad Whitmore, is you have to do the donkey work and learn the lines. But then I later found out that Brando's theory was, well, if you're just saying them for the first time, how do you know what they are? Again, that's a very interesting theory because you're now doing it for the first time. But it's absolutely impractical for doing theater work.
Well, it's a weird idiosyncratic take. I mean, I don't know if it's laziness, but I think it's him just he has a theater background. He knows to memorize lines, so I'm sure, I think it was just him because he got away with not doing the work for millions and millions and millions of dollars. He didn't even read the script for Apocalypse Now by the time he showed up to the set, and he improv most of that stuff because he didn't know it, which for that much money, I'm sorry, learn the goddamn lines.
I'm the same way. If I'd been directing it, I would have gotten an M80, filled it with live ammo, and basically said, learn your lines or you're going back to America in a body bag.
Which would have been an interesting take in the movie. Because, Coppola probably would have shot that live and then, really...
Different commentary track. Oh, we got, again, Oxford Scientific Films, just beautiful, absolutely beautiful imagery. Interesting note I should make is apparently, Dan Aronofsky's film The Fountain is coming out in a few months.
Wait.
Yes. Well, the interesting thing is it got held up for about a year because of budgetary problems because they were going to use a lot of digital effects, but instead... They're actually going to do a lot of the space travel stuff photochemically.
Nice. That is going to be great.
And plus, it's not only saves you money, but it's gonna give it a different look. So I'm curious to see how that's gonna play.
Do you think if Hendrix was still alive at this point, he could have done the soundtrack for this part?
I don't know. I rather like this part, because it's a very gentle part of the score right here. It's very quiet, very meditative.
I do too, but I think Jimi Hendrix would have had a connection to the scene, probably more than most of the scenes in this movie. But this right here, he put it was like, hey, all right, been there, man. Bam, 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 you know.
The guitar would have been a little jangling, I think, for the mood they're going for. But
I like the mood they're going for. I'm just it's
being silly. They're great people. Like to show the way. They use this. That's part of the speech they use for the trailers for Superman Returns. And that's one of the things I liked about Superman Returns is they didn't try to go campy or ironic with it. They basically set up Superman as a virtuous character. And I'm going to sound like a horrible Republican at this moment, but I think it's nice to see a central character that is virtuous, if that makes any sense.
Republicans don't have a lot to do with virtue, so I think you're in the clear.
Thank you very much. And by the way, this particular shot that is the first flying shot they got right on the film. That was the first time they actually nailed some of the flying technique in the film.
Wow, that was a pretty hardcore shot.
Yeah.
You know.
And now we are into Metropolis, the third part of the movie. Again, shot on location, late 70s New York.
Well, check it out. Now look at it. You know, it's like really tight. Everything's closed in. Everything's cramped. You know, you're not getting those wide shots of the Midwest. Everything is just already. You know, everything's tight and cramped and I don't know. Smart guy.
It is a different look. And I love the way they started out. That's Jimmy Olsen's camera. And very cute, very nice. Now we're getting into the more funny part of the movie. And this is where kind of when the film gets both at its best and as part of the best, Margot Kidder. Damn, you forget how cute she was back then.
She was very cute. You saw, what was it, the Brian De Palma movie Sisters? Is that Sisters? Sisters,
but I've actually never seen that one.
She was cute with her French accent and just being demonic and everything.
Ooh, French and demonic. That's a good combination. And I love the fact they give her that low tick where she can't spell the words. As somebody who has trouble spelling, I can identify with that.
She doesn't need to spell them right. I mean, powerful, owning it, you know, just like taking over. She's got a fucking she's got a...
Oh, it's all right. We're all grown-ups here.
Terrific look for the part. Just, you know, very centered, very strong, very, you know, she's not pretending to be all those things. She's just owning that.
Mm-hmm. And again, I gotta also say that this is our first time really seeing Christopher Reeve in the movie, the late great Christopher Reeve. And I love that. And you can see how slouched he is in this scene. But basically, that's one thing you have to pay attention to in his performance. And is his body language, how his body language changes from when he's Clark Kent to Superman. When he's Clark Kent, he's kind of stooped over, he's slopped over, he's got a... he's trying to make himself look small. When you see him as Superman, you know, he's just rock solid. He's just straight and hard. It's just amazing.
I didn't realize how much the new Superman, Clark Kent, resembles Christopher Reeve's Clark Kent. You know, the hair, the design, the costume, the posture, you know...
Again, that's probably Singer because he loves the first two movies.
He is a man with really good taste.
Absolutely. And again, the interesting thing is when they originally cast Christopher Reeve, he wasn't really in shape to play Superman, but they liked his take on it so much that they went ahead and hired him, and then basically hired Dave Prowse to train him to get bulk him up.
He looks great. He does have such a great take on the character, and he does have such a good look for it. You know, he's got the really square jawline, but that all-American good boyishness, you know. And, I felt the new guy was a little too pretty. And it's not that Christopher Reeve isn't pretty, but you can kind of see him as he's not like
dangerously close to an Abercrombie and Finch model.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You know, he's exactly. The new guy's a model. This guy's just someone who's like you can see him in overalls in the Midwest. You can see him being a clown. You can see him, even though he's an attractive guy, you can see people not being attracted to him, which the new guy's a much harder time with.
Again, I think it might be also a generational issue. I mean, although I think Ruth was actually the same age as Reeve Reeve when he played Superman as Reeve is now when he played it.
Well, I'm not even talking about the age. I'm just talking about now. There was a big difference in age between Margot Kidder here. And
Oh yeah, I think Kidder was about 30 when she did the movie, whereas Kate Bosworth was 24. Who's that on the phone? Okay, never mind. But it's but again, I like Kidder. She's got this great take on the material, and she's fast. She's good with the dialogue.
She's also very centered, very grounded in her poise, her posture, her power. Just a very strong actor. Just a trained actor, not someone who went out to make it as an actor. Someone who's like really concerned with given the power and the effort. And you really, really need that for Lois Lane. The thing is, like, why would the most powerful being on the planet be attracted to one particular person? What is it in that person? And it's got to be the independence. It's got to be the inner strength. The inner strength is a reflection of his outer strength that he has to admire. And the other one, the new one, she just didn't have it.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't think Kate Bosworth was that bad, but she did kind of come off as kind of a more like a freshman at Vassar than a Pulitzer Prize winning. And we almost forgot to say a few nice words about Jackie Cooper, who played Perry White in the film. Now, the interesting thing is Frank Langella played him in played Perry White in the new film, but he looked more kind of a Rupert Murdoch like icon, whereas with help me out here. With Jackie Cooper's Perry White, you get the feeling this guy basically started out selling newspapers at age 6.
I kind of love Frank Langella's though. I loved his. He's just a great actor to watch. So he was like one of the classic people in it.
Mm. Oh, and of course here comes the first scene where we find out where he reveals his power. And this is very sweet, very fun. Probably one of the best sequences. Again, written by Tom Mankiewicz. And you were out of the room when I mentioned this. He's actually was a second-generation screenwriter. His dad was Joe Mankiewicz, who directed All About Eve, all those great films from the 50s and 60s.
I was just kind of noticing this scene, and maybe this is the time. Maybe it could be any number of things, but. They go to this really cartoonish place, kind of at this point. I love Christopher Reeve's goofiness in it, but you go from this really serious, heavy movie, this epic movie, to this really rural, pastoral, really serene place, and then to go to kind of this. That's great. That's a great shot. But this over the top cartoonishness, you take it a little less seriously. Yeah. And I don't know if that hurts the movie or not for me, but it's just, I kind of wish they would have taken it.
It's a different tone at this point. I think at this point now we're into the front page His Girl Friday mode right now. But it's not so bad. We're going to be coming up, though, in a minute. We're going to be dealing with Otis and Lex Luthor, and we're going to have a few words about that.
Yeah. I'm right there with you,
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm sure it's homage to the kind of like golden / silver age of comics. When these comics were out, they were campy, they were over the top. The bad guys were always very silly. I mean, there was the solid core, but there was that silliness, and even at this point, it was still going on, and that was the trend in comics. So you can kind of forgive them that. It wasn't until like the mid '80s where there was the 70s it started, but there was a really big shift in the '80s. So.
And here we go. Here is Ned Beatty as Otis. First of all, let me say I have nothing but love in my heart for Ned Beatty. Wonderful actor. Deliverance Network. Seriously, go rent Network. And just see him. He has one scene as the head of a corporation where he's basically dressing down Howard Beale, and it's absolutely fucking brilliant. See, I can use the word now, too.
He won an Academy Award for that, too.
He did, and he was only in it for one scene, but that's, again, Patty Chayefsky's script.
And he only shot one day.
Yeah. So, lesson to all actors, if you only get hired for a job for a day, take it. You never know. But again, now we're into kind of this. This is where it gets a little too silly, because you basically find yourself wondering, okay, Lex Luthor, criminal genius, why does he have this guy as a sidekick?
Well, it's there was this weird tradition in comic books where you had the really, really unfortunate sidekicks to the main bad guy. I mean, the tradition was comic relief, which is what they're using it here for,
Right.
but there's just no real intellectual justification for it. You got to kind of give the benefit of the doubt that he has something going on that helps. I mean, maybe him and Lex Luthor were old-time friends, like maybe they grew up together and he just helped him out as a kid and there was just some sympathy, but...
I actually have my own theory, which I actually posted on my blog several months back, where I basically said my personal theory was that the subtextual thing was that well, we'll wait until we get to Miss Teschmacher before I go into that theory. But again, it's all shot Grand Central State. A lot of this was shot in location, and I believe the actor who's playing this role was actually no. I was about to say he worked on Kojak with Donner when he was directing for Kojak. But no, he actually mentioned that the detective's name is Artemis, who was actually the name of the detective who was the technical advisor on Kojak. That's what I was thinking.
They just mentioned Poughkeepsie in the Grand Central Station, and any time I even hear or see the word Poughkeepsie, I think of the French Connection.
Oh, yeah. So, you get caught picking your feet in Poughkeepsie?
Yeah, exactly. Which is a great line, and just his take on that. It just kind of bring this full circle.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, Gene Hackman played Popeye Doyle, and he was actually very scary as Popeye Doyle, and we're going to get into that in just a minute. Again, I think this part right here was actually shot at Pinewood. That is actually a set that was designed.
Really?
Well, you can see why that part was a set right here, because in a moment he's going to disappear, because that's the part of the wall that's going to allow him to go through. And again, that stuff was shot probably at Grand Central. And again, this is one of those things where they're just basically matching all the footage, trying to match all the footage from the different places to give you this nice, seamless quality.
See, you mentioned having suspending your disbelief for the relationship between Lex Luthor and Ned Beatty's character, but I have a harder time suspending disbelief that there was a hydraulic door there because someone had to build it.
Exactly.
There's monitors. People have to put those in there. There's wiring that's required for that.
Mm-hmm. And again, this is one of those things that has been dissected. Again, all these cliches we're talking about henchmen have been so dissected over the last 10, 15 years. I mean, my God, you see an episode of the Venture Brothers nowadays, they just go into the whole henchman thing like nobody's business.
Never seen it.
You've never seen the Venture Brothers?
I saw one episode, but I haven't got too far into it.
I've got the box set at home. It's really good. Oh, and again, interesting thing, that's actually done with front projection. He's actually on a studio, and that's actually a plate that was shot, and he's actually falling in front of just a regular screen.
Oh, so they didn't kill him for the movie?
No, Jake, they didn't. He's probably still alive and collecting residuals.
Okay, because that would have been...
Yeah, that would have been bad.
I mean, yeah, you applaud their commitment.
Right.
But, it's just not necessary.
Jake, this is Superman, not 8mm.
Did they kill him in 8mm?
I'm not answering that. All right.
Popeye Doyle right there, actually. Miss Teschmacher.
Valerie Perrine. Valerie Perrine. Sorry you had to hear that, but
I'm sorry I had to see it. You guys at home. You lucked out.
Oh, yeah, I kind of went to a bad place there for a minute. But, I mean, ye gods, Valerie Perrine.
Ye gods, that set. Look at the lighting.
Again, a combination of John Barry's set and Jeffrey Unsworth's photography.
Is that you think that's practical lighting there?
I think that is actual. I think that might be some practical lighting. Oh, my God. I'm sorry.
Keep it together. Keep it together, Richard. Keep it together.
Stay on to
Mr. Gene Hackman.
Mr. Hackman. Wonderful actor, but unfortunately not scary in this movie. And again, that's probably because he was not written as scary. Because as I've said before, in The French Connection, he was incredibly scary as Popeye Doyle. But here he's more the champagne villain.
Well, I mean, and Kevin Spacey is a great example of this. Just because you're not written scary doesn't mean you don't have to be scary. I mean, there's a healthy, Richard Donner has to take some credit for this too. It's like this guy is supposed to be this global threat, and to kind of like toss him off as a cartoon actually kind of does Superman and the movie itself kind of a disservice. Because you really need that threat and you need that evil. The whole thing is that like these myths have to counterbalance each other. So you got the power. You have Superman's outer strength, but his inner goodness. You need to counterbalance it by Lex Luthor's outer weakness, but his inner strength, like his intellectual strength, and his amorality, counterbalances Superman's complete morality. And you don't really see that how that he kind of. They address it, but he doesn't inhabit that complete lack of morality, that complete lack of concern. You see more vanity than genius.
And of course, this is the line that apparently got carried through with Superman Returns, which was kind of enforced. And that's actually the one thing I had problem with Superman Returns is the whole land scheme just struck me as massively impractical.
Well, the only thing, and I don't disagree, but the only thing that was nice about it was Lex Luthor's indifference to the millions and billions of people that were going to die.
Yeah, that I liked. I liked. I had no problem with him being indifferent to the death of millions. I was just trying to figure out how he was going to make a buck off of it.
Yeah, it was like, hey, now that I've killed billions of people, you can live here if you pay me.
It's like, and you thought you had trouble with your landlord folks. I gotta say, Mark McClure in that jacket. Does anybody ever wear plaid anymore?
If I had that jacket, I would wear it.
But you're insane.
So is he.
Good point.
Now, there's just a very subtle genius to Margot Kidder here. She's simultaneously inhabiting and Christopher Reeves, they're simultaneously inhabiting that cartoonish world, still keeping one foot in reality and being true to the characters all at the same time. And that is, not enough credit is given to that kind of acting. It's like not enough credit is given to that subtle layering and keeping people in three simultaneous worlds and being true at the same time. You really just got to give them credit for doing the work on that.
Yeah. And of course, we also have to point out this particular shot this one is a real oneer because it's basically goes on for a good couple of minutes. And again, it's one of those things where it's like, that's the sort of thing that only stage training can sustain, because nowadays if you see a movie, people are basically acting like 6-second bursts.
See, they memorize their lines. Unless you're in a Paul Thomas Anderson movie.
The man who loves his long takes.
Well, and Paul Thomas Anderson is a great example of someone who he's not a film. I mean, he studied, but he keeps it classy. He goes to the old schools. He's a Robert Altman geek. You know what I mean? He studies the old school filmmakers who made it an art, and in turn keeps filmmaking an art. He really needs to make another movie, though. Really bad.
He is making one. I think he's making one called There Will Be Blood, starring Daniel Day-Lewis.
This is the best news I've ever heard in my life. Just now, you're all listening to me, hearing the best news I've heard.
Again, I gotta love these beautiful exterior shots, just absolutely. And again, this part right here, shot not in New York, but again on Pinewood Studios, because there's no way they could have got. This is the upcoming helicopter crash. Sorry to spoil it for people who are seeing this for the first time, but if you're watching it for the first time, why the hell are you listening to us?
Yeah, I'm really gonna have to go ahead and say that they're not watching this for the first time.
Yeah, I'm not even sure they're listening to us. But anyway,
and let's really hope they haven't seen. They've already seen Superman Returns, because we've already given a lot of stuff away.
Right. But again, this is just very good, very old school filmmaking. You can see how he sets everything else up. He's setting up the little threat. He's setting up
Just check out the perspective. You get the line from the helicopter going straight into the background. You're reading this. You know there's tension setting up. You know where everything is. That something bad is going to happen. It's all there waiting for you, but it's not telegraphing it either.
And there we go.
Until now.
There it is. And again, they're using a mechanical helicopter, probably on a. Oh God, it's been so long since I've heard the Donna commentary track. I forget how exactly they did this, but I think they made about 2 or 3 different helicopters for this scene.
Wow.
Well, again, you could afford this. This was not an inexpensive movie, and again, that was one of the problems.
Oh, that is great. That is a great shot. Reminds me of Airplane.
But in a good way.
Yeah.
Ooh.
You'd think that they would just get a real helicopter, tie it to something, and just fly it around for a bit. But then you need an actual Superman to save him.
Exactly. Whoa.
Oh, see that shot? You really, really, really kind of feel the vertigo, you know?
Yeah.
So it's none of that cut shooting. It's like, hey, there's the ground. Hey, there's me. Hey, there's the ground again. No, it's just like right there. You're kind of feeling, that's making me nervous.
Oh, again, I think they did that. That was a front projection shot, which of course is different from a rear projection shot because that means the background is as bright as the foreground objects.
Wow, look at that. Looks like Inferno or Ghostbusters.
Ooh. Oh.
Something really cool is about to happen. Now, this is one of those, arbitrary plot devices where you know nothing's going to happen to her. You know she's going to get saved. So it's a real trick for the director to actually make this tension real.
Whoa!
Because you want to actually feel like that there's a chance of her getting splattered.
Well, of course she can't be splattered because we need her for the rest of the movie.
So how do you convince the audience that something really serious is going on? And just
I just love that little look. He's going, whose hat is it? Oh boy! And here we come. Oh, this I gotta admit, this gag I like. This I kind of dig because. He just looks at the phone booth. He goes, "That's not going to work for me."
There's the practical question of, like you wouldn't know that, but still, it's cute, it's fun.
Yeah. Okay, and there it is, and here comes. Hello.
This is so great, and they do a good job of setting. Oh, that's neat. He's so, and Christopher Reeves again, so good of just like switching gears and just just inhabiting that power, that icon, and just being a badass all of a sudden.
Yeah. Ooh, and
yeah, it's a really great way to set up their first meet. Well, not their first meeting. You've got me. Who's got you? I love that. That's a good. Now that is a good meet cute line. Well, and it works for the kind of cartoonishness. Suspension of disbelief, but that is great.
That was actually an afterthought. That was actually not in the original script. But then I think Donna thought to himself, we need something to kind of cap the scene off, and said, can we have him hold on to the helicopter and take it back up too?
Well, and it gives a new limit to like how powerful he is. It steps up his compassion, their relationship, and his power all kind of at the same time. People usually don't call me this often.
I've noticed that. I figure it's the one time. Check the line. It might be somebody I'm expecting.
It's not.
Okay, good. Yeah. But again, we don't know how to pause this thing, folks, so you're getting it live. What are we going to do? It's like washing your car in the rain.
This is real, man. This is reality.
Yeah.
We're not gonna cut anything for you. Yeah. You're getting the real deal.
You're going to have to just deal with our intensity. Oh.
Look at him. I love him. It's too bad you were in a horse riding accident.
Oh, man, it's just heartbreaking. He was good in other things. Have you ever seen a film called Death Trap?
Years ago, barely remember.
Oh, go back and see it. He's very good in it. It's a Sidney Lumet film based on an Ira Levin play. Very fun, and he's very good in it.
It's one of those unfortunate things where he became such an icon with this movie. he became synonymous with Superman that it's it was hard to see him in too many other things where that wouldn't be attached to it.
Yeah, and I guess that's something that Ruth's going to have to deal with now. He's going to have to deal with the fact that, okay, now people know him as Superman. I gotta stop for a minute. We gotta point out this particular shot coming up was shot in the old-fashioned Batman style, which is everything was built sideways. Everything was actually built flat, and even that stuff right there was actually bolted down.
I remember when I saw this when I was a kid, how nervous this scene made me. how much anxiety I got from the scene. Because that just freaked me out. I think I've been afraid of heights ever since.
I'm the same way. You're talking to a guy who once got a nosebleed at the end of Darkman.
Oh, it's so cute. And he's just showing off.
Oh. Interesting thing, that was actually built sideways. That guy was actually harnessed to his chair.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow, what a great effect for that shot. That's awesome. And, you get to kind of there's no reason Superman had to be standing to the side, but it was such a fun shot to have.
Exactly. And again, that costume could look so And an interesting thing is originally when the Salkinds were trying to make this movie, their original plan was to cast a big actor as Superman. They had actually approached William Goldman to do the script, and Goldman wanted to do it, but then they told him that we're going to get a big star for Superman, and he said, there's no way it can do it, because no big star will be able to wear the suit. He actually tells the story that Warren Beatty, when it was his turn, got a suit that the producers sent him. He went and he put it on, went out in his backyard to his pool, stuck his hands out, started running around the pool, saw his mate, and realized, I can't do this.
Yeah, it's too bad that actor vanity can get away for a really, really, really good role. But, it was a win-win situation. We got Christopher Reeves, and you got someone that you can just make Superman in your head as opposed to someone else who you'd be like, hey, that's Warren Beatty playing Superman.
Yeah, exactly. You don't have with Beatty, you would have had the baggage. I mean, and I don't know if 79, I think he could have looked right for the role, but I can understand why he decided. I don't even know if it's just vanity. It's just it's a tough thing to sell the suit, I would imagine.
Well, I'm sure Warren Beatty would have been great, but just Christopher Reeves really, really, really sells the look, and acting the part, which is, not really as important anymore, but once upon a time they counted for something.
Yeah. And of course, Beatty missed the chance to nail Margot Kidder, but that's a sign. No. I'm a bad man.
He's doing fine. Yeah, a little cartoony,
Yeah, this is the part of the film where it gets to be a little cheesy. And again, it should be pointed out we're talking Mankiewicz. His previous work had been on a couple of the Roger Moore Bond films. He had done Live and Let Die, and I'm trying to remember, what was the one in Las Vegas? I was trying to remember that earlier. The ones with, Jimmy Dean and the girls Bambi and Thumper.
You would know way before I would.
Oh, God, and I'm blanking on.
If you don't know, chances are I won't know, Richard.
That's just...
The you can forgive the cartoonishness. So you can forgive it for the time and the style and kind of what they're going for the movie. And they never... with the exception of maybe Lex Luthor and Ned Beatty, really let it get in the way of the plot.
Yeah. Oh, and I just like this little scene right here. It's just like the most powerful being in the universe, and he's saving a cat. I mean, and again, it's like that biblical thing. What's that quote about the falling of a sparrow?
In the Bible?
Yeah, there's something about... He can. I'm blanking on it. My scripture.
There's the Hamlet one, but
okay, I'm blanking. Never mind.
There's a special providence in the fall of a spirit.
That's what I was thinking of.
I think it's Hamlet.
Oh, you're probably
right.
Oh, and you got to feel sorry for the little girl because the next day when the newspapers came out, that girl's getting a new toy.
Yeah, this kind of obligatory sequence of him saving a bunch of things is kind of fun to watch. Just all the different okay, how many bad things can go wrong and what can he do? Not a lot of tension in it, but it
does establish. Ooh.
The pilot, is that who I think it is?
Who
is that? What's his name? He looks like no, it's not him. It's clearly not him now. But for a brief minute, he looked like a really young. Good night and good luck.
David Strahan?
Yeah.
No, not him. No, I'm not sure who the actors were playing this. I should have checked the credits before we did this, but nope, just a bunch of journeyman British actors with American accents.
Oh, that's funny.
Well, because basically, again, keep in mind, a lot of the studio stuff was shot in England at Pinewood Studios.
That's why it looked like him for a second, but still, he probably would have been a lot younger here.
Oh God, you gotta love that. That's just great. He just gives you this little, "Hey, how you doing?"
I'm a good old boy. Just making sure. Yeah, and again, the new guy did a really good job with that. The opening sequence in Superman Returns when he was like, "Don't let this turn you off flying." He's really, really good in.
Yeah, and it was a nice callback to the original too.
Yeah, he was good with that. I was gonna say earlier, we were talking about how he might be lumped into that icon. I actually think he's still like that actor can do it. Will have an easier time doing other stuff because he's going to be compared to Christopher Reeves as opposed to Christopher Reeves, who just became Superman.
Exactly. And this is a new sequence that was actually not in the original theatrical version.
Kind of his weird like Jesus moment.
Yeah.
There's a part of this mythology, the Apollo, there is a very serious Jesus part of it, because they all kind of represent the same force, that solid, grounded, good holiness, They're not to say, for those of you that will take this the wrong way, that Jesus is a myth, but it's like Jesus represents that solid, holy, good thing, Superman. Back to Apollo, back to, the Greek legends, but there's always, in a weird way, superheroes, or comic books, are the new mythology. They are the modern mythology, but in a world that doesn't acknowledge them. It doesn't acknowledge mythology. They're just kind of become this kind of lowbrow art form as opposed to, at one time when they were all worshipped. I mean, you're getting the whole sense of the Trinity here. You got the Father here, Jor-El, talking to the Son, who's sent to Earth to save humanity, who's struggling with it, struggling with all the pressure of it, just like especially in 2 and 3 that he does, and even wants to kind of get rid of it and then embrace it again. And you got kind of you can look at the Son, the power of the Son is the Holy Spirit, or his mom is the Holy Spirit, or actually the Holy Spirit would probably be represented by. His the earth, his adopted family, who gave him that goodness, that inner goodness. Mythology.
Well said, sir. Well said. Again, I gotta love that set. That is just absolutely beautiful. And we're going to, by the way, for those of you who are really into trivia, coming up is going to be a brief little cameo appearance by the film's director, Richard Donner, and you'll know in just a second.
I have no idea what he looks like.
You will wait a minute. What just happened? Hold it a second.
No way.
We're back, folks. The DVD got stalled for a second. But there he is, right there, right next to Reeve.
On the right?
Yeah.
I love director cameos.
Yeah, yeah. And actually, the interesting thing is, Donna actually started out in the 50s as an actor and just kind of fell into directing and TV.
Happens, and a lot of the best directors do. Sidney Pollack.
Yeah. Oh dear God. Oh, sorry. Valerie Perrin. Again, here we come. Now we're coming to kind of the campy part of the movie where we see Luthor starting to make his plans. And again, this is actually a good time for me to tell you the theory I had about why he keeps Otis around.
Really good time for this theory.
Yeah, it's basically my theory was, why is he keeping Miss Teschmacher around? And it's obvious because she's really, really pretty. And she's there for the sex. And my basic theory was he's keeping Otis around for kind of the same reason. That's right, folks. My theory is in this particular universe, Lex Luthor is a switch hitter. Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, it's Miss Teschmacher. Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, it's Otis. And then Sunday, everybody rests.
Or it's all together now. And I think Otis's costume in this particular scene really supports your theory.
Yeah, it's my basic theory is that's why he's keeping him around. And again, it's not to say anything about Hackman and Beatty because they actually work really well together. I mean, they play off each other beautifully. It's just we're talking about conception of the characters. Luther's not that scary, and Otis, let's be frank, ain't that good of a henchman.
Yeah, it's kind of a lose-lose situation. But I mean, the terrific actors and what they do is great, but it's like. It just kind of sells the story short a little bit, not having the evil,
Oh man, again, Jackie Cooper. I love the fact he looks like an old school newspaper guy. He's got that kind of fast talking bing and the bang bang and the boom thing.
There is kind of resemblance between him and Langella. Is that how you say it?
Langella,
yeah. You kind of, sort of, in a way, see the resemblance between them.
No, there's a slight resemblance. I don't know if that was meant by a singer, though, because I know originally he cast Hugh Laurie as Perry White for the movie.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe that was Frank Langella's. Maybe that was Langella's take. Maybe he watched his study and tried to kind of personify. He's a pretty committed actor, so you can see that happening. But.
Yeah. And again, I'm just loving some of these. This is how people dressed in the 70s. It's like, come on. Some of those plaids are just screaming.
I'm all about them. I kind of miss them.
You're a plaid guy.
I just, it's a good stuff. I want to be able to put a cigar in my mouth and have someone just instantly be on the point to light it for me.
Again, this is one of those things. We know smoking is bad for your health, but you know what? Screw it. It's a great visual. Speaking of great visuals, I just love... God, again, she just looks so damn pretty in this. And again, you got big props to Jeffrey Unsworth, who did just an incredible job shooting the thing.
Kind of interesting to note that we're almost an hour and a half into the movie and we haven't actually had an inciting incident yet.
How do you mean?
Well, I mean, there's really no conflict has taken place yet. There's no initial setup for conflict yet. We don't have, it's. I mean, we're an hour and a half into setup, which is by now, by all points, the movie would be over, and we haven't even gotten the plot started yet.
This is a fair point. It has been sort of just building up the mythology, and we haven't even gotten to the point where Luther says, oh, by the way, I've got a couple missiles flying around.
Yeah.
Which is that's the big conflict, is Superman versus Luthor.
Yeah, how long is this movie?
I think it's about... Let's find the DVD case. I think Again... And interesting, by the way, this scene was the scene they used for the auditioning. If you look at the rest of the DVD, they actually have shots... actually show you different screen tests of different people auditioning for Lois Lane and Superman.
Yeah, I'm pretty anti-smoking. The filthy habit, it doesn't look good, blah, 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 blah. But the one thing that comes from it is just Margot Kidder's sexy smoker voice. There's if nothing else, her just really, really sexy voice when she's having these exchanges. Oh, oh, man. I think it's...
Okay. And again, this was also shot at Pinewood. And again, I have to talk about a lot of actually who else was up for this thing when they was narrowing down people for the movie for Lois Lane. Stockard Channing. Really? That's right. It was between Margot Kidder and Stockard Channing. Stockard Channing back then probably would have done a pretty damn good job of it.
Yeah.
You finding the time on there? Let me see for a second. Again, sorry to keep... Here, vamp for a second.
I'm just... the only reason I'm concerned about the time is I'm just kind of looking at percentages.
2 hours and 34 minutes.
So we're 60% into the movie and no initial plot setup yet, which is kind of fun. She is just stunning. And just... Hollywood beauty anymore. It might be a time thing, but there's something so two-dimensional and plain about women or just beauty in Hollywood. Women or men. Either way, it's just this cardboard cutout. There's no real elegance. There's no real dimension. There's Margot Kidder. Like if you compared her to the actress today, she probably wouldn't get the part. And B, she just has a very unique look that's all her own. But there's just such a stunning quality. I mean, she really does kind of have that goddess quality. Looks like Superman's got a boner there.
Ouch. Well, the second half of Superman is man, so. Actually, reminds me of the scene in Mallrats where T.S. and Brody. You don't.
We can stop there.
Okay, all right. We don't need to go into that. Although now would be also a good time to mention that apparently it should be noted that back in '96, Kevin Smith did write a draft for the new Superman movie which was going to actually encompass his death and rebirth. And I've actually read it. I know you're not a big Kevin Smith fan, but it was actually a pretty decent script.
Well, you should also be interested to note that thank God it never happened. It's much better that it was, how it went down. If you're going to bring it back, make Bryan Singer do it,
Fair point. Well, Kevin Smith wouldn't have directed. They would have brought somebody in who would have directed.
Well, the spider and dressed in black.
Yeah, well, let's not forget the spider thing, that was John Peters.
Look at that curl. You got to admire that curl. There it is. That's beautiful.
Again, I know. Again, that's probably. And I forget. We don't see the curl when he's Clark Kent, do we?
No, not at all.
Which, of course, brings up the practical real-world question: is does he have a comb in those tights?
He's gonna have to. No, it's when he's racing around, when he's changing, he changes so fast. He actually can take the time to do his hair.
Yeah.
With Super Moose. I apologize. That was horrible. It was just bad pun.
I missed it, but that's fine.
That's all right. I just want to apologize, everybody. I wasted a lot of time with that. I was definitely saying, the person I would have picked for Superman today would have been Eric Bana. If he didn't already do the Hulk, I think he would have been a perfect Superman.
Would have been interesting. He actually looked a little less embryonic than Ruth.
Yeah, he definitely has those chiseled features, that boyish looks, but he can also completely inhabit that innocence and goodness. He's such a solid actor too. I mean, he could have hit every level without it. Nothing against the new guy, but just like Eric Bana, I'm a fan of Eric Bana. Just think he would have been terrific. He was just. Already had the whole thing going on, so they probably just weren't looking for that.
Well, also the fact is that they tend, whenever they do these Superman movies, they always tend to go for the unknown because he has less baggage.
I think Ben is known, but he's not big. You know what I mean? It's like, people know.
Whoa,
who he is.
we got to stop here for a second because we got to talk about this.
You're right.
This is just really. Absolutely. I mean, here I have to be honest and say I do think the flying effects have dated just a little bit. You can see some of the because you can see the grain of the film behind them.
But you can forgive it for how stunning the photography is.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, just the lighting and just how they're shot. I mean, you can forgive all the rest. I mean, there's even. Which the new Superman actually dealt really well with. It was kind of the physics of it, her just kind of like flying along. But yeah, because there's no way she'd be able to hold her legs out like that. But other than that, just like
we can let that slide.
You take everything in its context. You just look at the shot, and it's so beautifully photographed that it doesn't matter.
And again, props to Williams' score. I mean, it's just.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It works. He was paying attention. He cared. Once upon a time, he cared.
Of course, there's going to come a point later in the sequence where it's going to turn a little sour. You know the sequence I'm talking about.
I don't. Like I said, it's been a while.
All right. Well, we'll wait till we get to that point. Now, again, we were talking a little bit ago about how what if Superman had landed somewhere else, but throughout comic history, there have been the occasional one-shots that have showed what would happen if Superman had grown up not there. I seem to remember a few years back there was a comic book that showed Superman growing up in communist Russia.
Yeah. Well, he it's like something always goes horribly wrong. I never read the Communist Russia one. I'd like to think if he was raised by some, very, very nice, out there Bolsheviks, he would have been, the communist hero. But I mean, the point is, any other scenario, everything would have gone horribly wrong, and you need that that goodness, that all-encompassing morality. It's like it's not he's not a character as much as a character in a comic book as he is as a symbol of something absolute. Like a model, just like Batman on the other end of the spectrum. Batman is the symbol of absolute justice, where Superman is the symbol of absolute morality, and just the relationship between them and how that works. Yeah, it's hard to suspend your disbelief there, but
whoa, and then
I do love his indifference there. Like, I gotta go get her.
Oh dear.
Oops.
And then we've got that's a nice shot.
Yeah.
It's like but here now we're coming to the point where it goes a little south. The spoken word version of "Can You Read My Mind?" Yeah.
Yeah, that's a little unfortunate.
Yeah, that's the point where it starts grading on. This is the part where it's so beautifully shot. Apparently, I guess they had recorded a vocal version of it, singing, but I guess Donna wanted it to be Lois's interior thoughts. So they tried a version with her singing, and they tried the spoken word version, and apparently, he went with the spoken word version. You got that?
Yeah.
Okay.
You just that's a case of leave well enough alone. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. You can just have her thinking it, and it's going to do a lot more good than her actually saying these things outright. Thank God she didn't sing it. That would have been terrible. Maybe she has a beautiful voice. I don't know, but it just would have been so tacky. Can you read my mind?
I've actually heard the vocal version. Melissa Manchester actually did a version of it years ago. It's actually pretty good.
Do they sing along with the theme like that?
Yeah, they actually use the theme. I know it's like Celine Dion singing the theme to Titanic.
Oh man, that's you can fly. You belong in the sky. Yeah, this is unfortunate.
And they actually had a spoof of that in the second episode of this season's Venture Brothers, where the Monarch's trying to get his girlfriend back. There's an altercation. He ends up flying away with her, and he's actually speaking the same thing as he's carrying her along.
So I'm pretty impressed if 4 people ever hear this commentary. To those people, go check out the Venture Brothers, and that would make a lot more sense.
Seriously, it is a really good show. You got to rent it.
No. My friend Josh is a good fan. I'm going to see it one day. I just going through Aqua Teen Land.
And again, I love the.
There's other points of just like ultimate disbelief, and one of these is what an apartment this size in this place in Manhattan or Metropolis, whatever, would actually cost, and could a reporter actually afford it?
Yeah, but it's basically what we like to refer to as the Friends effect.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, they're really going for something else. I mean, I don't know the Richard Donner track. I don't know anything he said about it, but I really get the sense.
I got to say something about this shot. Now, basically, what we just saw was a rear projection of Superman flying off, because that's the only way we can pull off this shot where you can see Lois walking back into her apartment and meeting Clark at the front door. That's the only way you could have pulled that off.
That's awesome. Well, the fact that they even did the trouble to do that in one shot. The fact that they went through the effort to do that is great.
That, folks, is old school film. Again, we are about the old school because we're a pair of old farts.
Because we're old fools who are so cool.
Better way of saying it than I did.
Well, that's a line from a song, and I think Tag Team said it best when they said, "Whoop, there it is. I thought you knew."
And again, this has got to be the high point of Reeves' performance right here. Just this moment where he takes off the glasses and he almost goes up 3 inches. Look at that. It's like suddenly he's thinking to himself, I can tell her. I can tell her. Sure, why not? She'll buy it. She'll like the fact I'm Superman.
And he can, again, suspension of disbelief, the difference between a guy wearing glasses and not wearing glasses, like suddenly you can tell, but he really creates such a different character and really just goes so far that you could kind of actually, but you can let that go. You can let that pretty blatant fact go.
That was one thing that did annoy me about Superman Returns when they had that scene where you could see where they did the thing.
Yeah, where they thought for a second it might be him, and then they were like, oh, no way. It was like they had a much harder time selling that there.
Yeah. Again, I gotta say, Valerie Perrine, my God, Valerie Perrine. Okay.
My God, that bookcase.
That is a cool, again, beautiful set by John Barry, who sadly died. Again, another person who died a couple years after this film was made. He was also actually on the verge of becoming a director. He was actually set to direct a science fiction film called Saturn III, but he got fired and ended up getting directed by Stanley Donen instead.
You all remember that movie, don't you?
Nobody remembers that movie. I don't even think Stanley Donen remembers that movie because it was a really bad science. It starred Farrah Fawcett, Kirk Douglas, then a giant robot with Harvey Keitel.
So you've seen it?
I saw it years ago on cable. It's
wow.
No.
Even if I did see that, I wouldn't remember it.
Yeah, well, that's me. Oh, again, I gotta say, I mean, the material was misconceived, but god damn, if Hackman and Beatty just don't sell the bugger.
Well, they're just really, really both solid actors. But my favorite inside the actor studio of all time is the Ned Beatty one. He's such an intelligent guy. He makes such intelligent choices. He's really, the old school acting, where acting at one point in time was actually an art form and, not just like an extension of modeling. It's like you really get to see that in effect here, even though, it may not work as well for the story as it could, but classic example. All around, this whole movie, just really, really solid acting all the way across the board.
Yeah, can you vamp for a second? I gotta use the restroom. I'll be right back.
Ladies and gentlemen, you heard it. He actually said it out loud. He didn't have to, but Richard Jensen is about to use the restroom. Other side, buddy.
Oh, no, I just actually need to use yours.
Oh, okay. So, gosh, Richard tries really hard when you're not going off of someone else. There's a black guy with something green. Oh, yeah, Addis Ababa. That's where they find the kryptonite. Now, not having seen the movie in a long time, I kind of forget the plot development here. But we're getting close to an inciting incident, and we have 45 minutes left in the movie about...
I'm coming.
Okay, thank God. Oh, man, I wasn't doing it. Hey.
I'm having trouble with my tooth lately, so I just had to rinse it out with some Listerine.
And you smell great.
Well, thank you. Pity this track's not going to come in smell-o-vision.
Pity smell-o-vision doesn't exist yet.
There you go.
Is she still? Has she done anything?
Oh, Valerie Perrine, she's been around for a while, although she's been fairly inactive the last few years. Again, she started out as a model, and she's been in a number of big movies. She was in Lenny with Dustin Hoffman playing Honey Bruce.
Oh, wow.
And I think she was also in Slaughterhouse-5.
Wow, I've been meaning to see that Lenny movie for the last year or so.
Oh, you should. It's a good Bob Fosse film about the life of Lenny Bruce.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of like the next kind of comedian I really want to kind of get down to hardcore study. What a great way to do it.
Mm. And now here's your inciting incident, Mister. They're gonna try to steal a couple nuclear missiles. How's that for an inciting incident, bugger?
Pretty good. Well, and the neat thing about it, though, is, I mean, they kept the setup. They were able to take their time and really set it up. But now that they get to the actual plot, they don't, make anything extraneous. They just cut to the chase, and then boom, they just go from there.
Again, this was a interesting thing. This car only flipped maybe about 2 or 3 times, but they shot it with 5 or 6 cameras and then just extended the take.
I don't know if that's physically possible. I don't know if that's physically possible for a car to flip that many times.
Well, it may have flipped just a couple times, and then they just extended it by using different takes.
Well, I mean,
it's the old Eisenstein thing of you break a same dish about 8 times.
Gotcha. Oh, it's a great shot. The red against all that green in the background.
And again, of course, just that great...
Richard?
I know, I can't help...
Richard?
It's Valerie Perrin. She's so pretty, and she can touch it. And I'm sorry.
And she's 90 now.
Oh, she's... Actually, I think she's probably in her 50s now. Who is that? Nobody.
Nobody. Something I'll answer later.
Oh, Larry Hagman making a little cameo in the film?
Oh my gosh! That's crazy. Was Dallas happening at this time?
I think Dallas was happening about this time. I think he just came in as a favor to Donner.
A nice guy. When cameos meant something.
Oh.
That's so funny. Yeah, again, the far-reaching suspension of disbelief, but...
That they'd actually let Otis be the one to program the...
Oh, that just everybody would leave an MX missile,
Yeah.
like...
Well, I mean, Valerie Perrin makes it very easy to suspend that particular bit of disbelief.
Well, it's a good thing you're not protecting our, nuclear arms, Richard. That's all I gotta say.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry. Never mind.
Love the wigs.
Love the wigs. And again, this is suspension of disbelief. The idea that they have Otis programming the nuclear missile. How good an idea was that?
Well, it's still at least within the realm of physics, and I'm sort of setting up my rant later on with that statement.
Well, no.
It's getting kind of a preview. I'm not going to...
I know. It's just the idea that apparently we're about to see that Otis has screwed up the coordinates of this particular nuclear missile. It was supposed to hit California, but instead it's going to hit Hackensack, New Jersey.
Did you pickle... Oh, what's it? Did you pick your feet in Poughkeepsie? Is that the line?
Yeah, I think that's the line. You ever pick your feet in Poughkeepsie?
You think... Oh, man. Yeah, gosh, you just... You want the really, really, really unfortunate Batmans, the Schumacher Batmans, kind of the same thing. You had, like... number 3, the one with Jim Carrey and Tommy Lee Jones, just played these cartoon characters that had nothing to do with their actual characters. Neither the Riddler or Two-Face were these giggling, laughing evil people, like the Riddler was like this cold, calculating guy, who was very methodical, and Two-Face was really, literally, he had, he was either good or he was bad, but he wasn't like, crazy cartoons, and it's really too bad. You lose so much. You lose a lot of potential, and again, it kind of dates the movie, and in this case, it doesn't hurt the movie. It just doesn't take it as far as it could have gone.
Exactly. Oh.
I'm glad they have backup costumes.
They came prepared. He probably figured Otis was going to make a mistake, so that kind of brings it back into believability just a little bit.
Love the tool belt.
Very cute. Well, the woman was a former model. She knows how to accessorize. And I like the nice sign, wide load
for an MX missile again. This is still Cold War was in effect. Blah blah blah, all that stuff. It's hard to imagine this kind of stuff happening. But that's what makes it fun.
We'll let it slide. Hoover Dam, just a little bit of foreshadowing. And
Fugitive.
I didn't kill my wife. You were actually supposed to say I don't care, but okay.
It's been a while.
All right.
Speaking of Tommy Lee Jones. All right, here comes the setup. A bunch of bad stuff is about to take place.
We find out that they're making the land deal, He's buying a bunch of cheap land cheap, and he's going to find a way to make it just a little more expensive.
Casinos.
Mm-hmm. Now you're just being snarky for the sake of snark.
Hey, that's why you have me on this track.
Yeah, but keep in mind, he's the guy who was selling the land to Luther, so he's not building anything. He's just taking his money and going home.
Yeah, Luther's like that.
I like that. You're blocking the set, Clark.
No, things are starting to happen.
And we're running out of stuff to say. Quick, say something interesting.
Oh man, well, don't put this on. Oh, nice tie. First of all, you got the tie, a little bit of symbolism. You got the little red right over his heart, whereas the symbol would be. So
we have officially started grasping at straws on this track, folks.
Costume designers think about this kind of thing. Well, and the thing is, as beautifully shot as this movie is, as well composed as it is, as well put together as it is, the story lacks. And it's taken this long to get a plot. It's a very kind of empty plot, fueled with a guy who's... You don't get a lot of motivation on the sense of Luther's part, and these things are kind of important, Lex Luthor, the character, is this very diabolical, very it's too easy to say evil, but like just completely amoral person who's only driven by serving himself versus Superman, who's driven by helping everyone, and we're really missing both of those. All right, here we are. Now we have conflict with 46 minutes to go.
And about damn time, too.
And it's just kind of a cheap conflict. And it's like, I'm going to blow up the world. You have to save it. I'm going to make a lot of money. It's kind of a cool setup though. This whole conversation, this ultrasonic conversation. That's kind of cool. That's actually something that you could kind of see out of the coming out of the comic book. I love how notices him jumping.
Oh, this is a nice shot right there, and there we go. And you don't even see him. Of course, the big real world question is, where the hell did his street clothes go?
Yeah, that's kind of unfortunate.
But never mind. We
that's
won't.
kind of like, the interior song monologue. It's like, it doesn't take much to justify these things, but now you're saying that his street clothes are magical and they disappear. Take the time to justify these things. Unfortunately, as we're going to see at the end of this, they don't.
And that's all the foreshadowing we need for right now. And actually, coming up, this next sequence was a part that was, again, not in the original theatrical cut, but has been added back for the DVD. It's basically Superman going to Luthor's lair and basically encountering a whole bunch of bad stuff.
Oh, that's a neat shot.
That's a neat shot. I think they actually used a miniature Superman.
A mini-me?
A miniature Superman.
A little person dressed
No. I mean, they actually built kind of a small Superman figure.
They built a robot.
No, they did not build a robot. It was more of a carving sort of thing.
Oh, that's cool. So this is the scene that we haven't seen before.
This is new. This is some newest stuff. Well, newish. Cuteness dimples.
She loves me. Can't get enough of Luther's wigs.
And of course, interesting thing is the reason that Luthor wears wigs throughout the entire movie is simply because Gene Hackman did not want to shave his head.
Are you serious?
I'm serious. He basically said he did not want to go. He goes bald in his very last scene. He's got a bald cap, but he did not want to shave his head.
What a prima donna!
Joke. Come on, it's Gene Hackman.
Come on, it's like it grows back. That's a great shot. Wow, I've never. Yeah, that's great. He's just kind of indifferently walking through it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I always, I love in this movie and the other two just Miss Tessmacher's weird affinity, with Superman, and Parker Posey rules at it. Just rules anyway.
Yeah. Well, again, it's that thing where you've got the combination of his basic decency and the fact that he's really frickin' cut, if I can maybe allowed to say as a heterosexual male.
No, you're not. You're gay.
You know how I know you're gay? Okay, no, we're not going to go into that. We're not going to get into that.
Yes. I can testify he's not gay.
And we'll leave it at that.
I, however...
Oh... This is a new shot right here. Now he's going to try to freeze Superman, and I can kind of
just cover him in styrofoam confetti.
I think
we'll see how styrofoam confetti affects you.
Yeah, you know what happens when that stuff gets up your nose. You're coughing it out for weeks. Yeah. No, it's just no. Again, this is one. I think I can see why they did it because they're basically establishing the fact that he is invulnerable. But we've already kind of established he was invulnerable, so I can see why they cut it initially. But it's kind of nice to have it back in because it is kind of a cool scene.
It's a cool scene, but yeah, it's just kind of like, it's kind of bringing this whole like sequence to a standstill right now. I wonder if he's gonna get out. It's these points in movies where I'd love a director to just kind of have the cojones to just stop it and say, all right, and roll the credits and be over. Like that's the end of the movie. Superman gets frozen to death. Just for something different. Yeah,
it's like AI. It's like, okay, it should have ended when he was in the water. Next to the blue fairy. That's when the film could have legitimately ended, but no, we go on with the others.
Yeah, this actually movie bears no resemblance to AI. It's kind of fun to watch.
Yeah. Oh, snap!
That was a bad movie.
I think I liked it a little more than you, but I can see your point.
I think if you had any like for it, no, and there were some good things about it, but it's that ending was hard to stomach.
Yeah.
And they meet. This is actually, pretty good scene. I mean, this is a great scene just because of the power that everybody just inhabits here.
And I just love that look he gives Otis. It's like...
That's good stuff. This is like kind of like Lex Luthor at his best right now. When they finally encounter Superman and really has to face off and really has to just be against him, this is where Gene Hackman really... just inhabits that. That's great.
Yeah.
Again, just that line right there. It's just really powerful, really amoral. That's when you really see Lex Luthor. Yeah.
Again, not as powerful as Spacey in Superman. I will go on record saying I think Spacey was a little better as Luthor than Hackman, but I think that's because the text supported him better.
Well, the text and the style of the movie supported him, and the directing supported that direction. It's not that Hackman couldn't have done it. He could have done it easily. He just, that's just not the way they went. But right. I think with that little interaction there, you really, really got to see that side. You really get to see the conflict here. It's really, really good.
And again, I gotta say, I love this set. It's basically set underneath New York City. And this was actually, when they were doing research, they were trying to find a decent lair for Lex Luthor. Donna and John Barry were in Grand Central Station. And John Barry said, could he have a Grand Central Station under Grand Central Station? Does that make sense? And it actually works. It is a beautiful set.
Beautiful, stunning. Suspension of disbelief goes away, but hey, who cares? This is, this is classic Luthor.
This is basically the villain exposition. This is the moment in every Bond film where basically the bad guy tells Bond, this is what I'm going to do, and you can't possibly stop me.
Well, but I mean, that comes from this. That comes from, the comic books, that comes from, the pulp, where this is, the good versus evil, morality versus amorality, that cockiness where, and for that moment, while the villain's giving it up, there's that, you get to see the vulnerability in the hero, you get to see the, what do I do, and it's cheesy, but there's a reason for it. There's something there for it.
Otisburg.
It's so great.
Yeah, and I'm looking. I think it's Teschmacher Peaks.
Perfect.
That's a Mankiewicz thing. That had to have been Mankiewicz.
Oh man, that's funny. Oh, so we just had to give it that silence. That's just...
And I just like that little moment where he goes, "Oh, you you broke the thing.
Yeah, I think earlier I wasn't giving Hackman enough credit. That was really good with them.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, here we go. Oh no.
What's
Oh,
wrong?
no.
What's
We're
wrong?
getting ready. We're about to go through the crasher metal. But instead of setting it up negatively, I'll set it up positively. Okay. Now, we're actually going to experience something pretty amazing. I was talking earlier about arbitrary conflict when someone is set up like, okay, we know they're not going to die. We know.
I gotta say this very quickly. That control guy is John Ratzenberger, famous playing Cliff and Cheers.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Nice, good call. When something, where a main character is threatened, but we know they're not going to die. So. We go along with it, and if it's really well delivered, we'll buy into it that there's an actual threat, but we don't invest too much into it. So, what happens when that threat is actually peaked out? It's we're about to experience a great dramatic development with a very unfortunate follow through. But we're setting it up right now. You got that. We're setting up the arbitrary conflict where people are in danger, but nothing bad could happen to them, right?
Wrong. That stuff is going to happen badly because Lex has a little surprise. And again, this is one of those. Again, this is one of those things I think people complain about is the fact that basically Superman kind of screwed himself in the scene because basically in his interview with Lois Lane, he let loose that he can't see through lead. That's kind of a bit...
Yeah. Well, you don't expect someone to actually, take advantage of it. You don't... he probably, when saying that, wasn't expecting someone to actually, use that. Or, he didn't have time to use it. So you can kind of justify that a lot more than other stuff. Wow, Superman was very nice to him there. This is a great scene, actually. And just Lex setting him up with that.
Oh, and he's so happy too. It's like the Boy Scouts going down.
Like, how do you know? But little archaeological find in Addis Ababa.
And actually, it's a place called Addis Ababa, right?
Yeah, it's the capital of Ethiopia.
I did not know this. See, now I've learned something new.
Yeah, it's kind of funny how I know that, but it's a totally separate story in life. Thank you, Bill Ibsen.
And this is also, I also have to realize this is probably the first time in his life that Superman has actually felt what he's feeling right now, which is fear. He's never been in a position where he's had the fear for his life because he's always been invulnerable. So
more fundamental is just that vulnerability period. That first of all he feels vulnerable, then he's like, "Wow, I'm not in a position of power." And this person, this is where we see that the superior power of intellect over the power of force. And that's kind of what keeps them at their even keel. The lesson of the story is that morality wins out over amorality in the end. But here you get to see, that these two people, even though Superman can knock them all over the place, mind has just as much power as matter, and which is why it's important that it's kind of, God versus the devil. It's kind of like all those powerful Loki versus, Thor or whatever.
Exactly. Basically, he needs a formidable opponent because, and again, that's probably a dramatic problem with Superman is if the guy's invulnerable, how can you have a threat against him? So that's always been the challenge, I would imagine, throughout the years, not just filmmakers, but, comic book writers, basically coming up with, opponents who can actually hurt the guy.
Well, the kryptonite is the Achilles heel. It's like there's always that one thing. There's always that thing that can set it apart. The suspension of disbelief here is that Luthor would walk away and he'd still be alive, and then of course Tessmacher kind of helping out the situation. But there's got to be the weakness on both sides that the enemy can exploit, and then that the hero can in turn exploit, and that's usually what wins it in the end. I mean, we're getting to Joseph Campbell kind of like myth here, but you need that weakness, but you need the elixir too.
Mm-hmm. And in this case, the elixir is an otherwise very nice girl from Jersey.
Yeah.
A very nice girl from Jersey, yeah.
Well, her, it's this great mirror image, where the Lex Luthor's weakness is her tiny bit of goodness that his all-powerful goodness can kind of, I don't want to say exploit, but can channel, His ultimate morality can expose that tiny bit of goodness, or any other opponent wouldn't even be an issue, but that little bit of her allows her to save him, and so that both of their weaknesses is part of their fault, She has an intellectual weakness for him. Superman has a physical weakness to kryptonite. I love this stuff.
You're getting into this now, aren't you?
Well, I mean, it just... that's why I'm a comic book geek. That's why I'm into superhero movies. It's, it's not just cheesy guys in tights. The tights are the least of it. That the cheese wellness is least of it. I mean, and that's why I love the movie Unbreakable, by the way. Because it really addresses all these kind of things.
It's a very underrated film, that one. And again, it should be known that Valerie Perrine was a former model, but the woman had some chops. She plays the scene very, very well.
Well, it was a different time in acting. You needed to have chops if you were going to get a role in movies. You couldn't just be pretty. You had to offer something, and here she is. And the standard, people rose to the standard before. Now they don't have to, so they don't.
And now comes the big saving everybody montage.
Well, nobody quite needs to be... people need to be saved, but nothing's happened yet. So, right now we're in the frame of mind that, okay, Superman can do it. He can go and stop all the missiles and protect everybody, and nothing bad will happen, right? We're still in that frame of mind.
Even though he's already said that he can only catch one missile, because basically he's got to get the one from Hackensack first.
Well, you're waiting for the twist, though. There's got to be something he could do. You need that impossible. That's the essence of the conflict. You need that. Okay, it's absolutely impossible, and then the mind reels. How is he going to do it? Because he's going to do it. He has to. He can only save one, but yeehaw!
I keep thinking that guy on the right is Christopher Lloyd. Every time I see the film, I'm wondering, is that Christopher Lloyd? Because it looked a lot like him.
See why you say that? Probably not, but it definitely did. That's kind of funny. That's worth checking out.
Again, I gotta say, I love this. This is just amazing stuff. And they got these plates just by basically helicopter shots, flying around, and then just basically, running the camera. Now you slow film down to make it go faster, right?
Okay, yeah, okay. It makes more sense.
Yeah.
Hot, ouch, ow.
Ooh. Good thing even his hair is invulnerable.
Oh, yeah. He's Superman. That's a neat shot. That's a great shot. That's a great wig.
He basically, and again, that whole thing is mirrored in Superman Returns when Parker Posey saves.
Yeah. She does a great Miss Taskmaster.
Although not the same name, obviously.
Hey, it's Belle and Luke. All right, here we go. Now we got a couple more missiles to go.
Okay,
what's gonna happen?
Oops.
Wait a minute. Now, what the heck happened? He didn't do it. He was supposed to, but he didn't.
But now he has to go back down and basically try to repair the damage. And this next sequence coming up, I still have no real idea how they did this. I'm going to have to look it up, but where he basically goes under the fault and starts repairing it.
Now, when I was a kid, and I was very young when I first saw this, but I clearly remember all this going, just kind of saying to myself, wow, this is pretty intense. They're really going far with this. It's already gone kind of a lot farther than you expect it to go, and then it just keeps going, which is a great, amazing, dramatic development. You're like, okay, how is he going to do that? How is he going to save it? How is he going to save all these people and all this bad stuff happening?
and just by going real goddamn fast. And
But I guess if he can make his clothes magically fade away, then you know.
he can pretty much have. Oh, and these are some new shots that were not in the original theatrical cut.
That's.
Yes, it went.
I can kind of see why they left those out. It's funny.
Basically, that's the filmmaker's revenge on Hollywood.
Well,
Whenever you're frustrated with the system, you take out the Hollywood sign.
I just love that there were just at that particular moment children underneath it.
Pure cheese. Oh, this is something that somebody who's about to go home on a train doesn't need to see.
Don't worry, I'm sure
it's fine. But the underground shots, I'm not sure how they did. Do you have any theories on that?
Oh no, not even. I mean, definitely a set. Definitely really saturated lighting. Probably slowed camera. It's probably like dragging them through somehow. But this is great. I mean, just great tension. Great, anxiety. Looks like they're rolling him through something, like he's on a conveyor belt.
That might be and I'm just loving these shots too.
Yeah.
They're just absolutely gorgeous. They're probably doing it. They're probably doing it simply. It's probably most of that is tin foil, and it's just lit that way.
That just looks beautiful, though. That's beautiful. I love these shots of the Golden Gate Bridge. These are great. Models probably, but
oh yeah, those again, Derek Many miniatures.
Yeah, they look great though. Great tension, okay, and again setting up, how is Superman gonna stop all this? Okay, it's not going into the sea, but that's a great delivery of that.
Yeah, it's like the kids are all right. Make the kids feel better.
Yeah,
they almost got killed, but hey, we got to see Superman, so that's.
But he was rushed, at the same time he was like,
he can't stop the sign on. And ooh.
Okay,
this is a great shot.
Superman doing his thing, saving everyone. Stay on target. Oh yeah, I remember. Yeah, I love this. This is great.
Ooh, right on the back. Oh, ouch. I'm gonna be feeling that for weeks. I'm gonna need Bengay after this. Ow. Oh,
probably a massage to him. It's like, wow, I gotta do that more often. I'm tense.
Okay. Oh, now this particular sequence has probably some of both the best and the worst model work in the film. The best, the actual model of Hoover Dam. The worst, the small town that is about to get enveloped. This was probably rushed due to production. But if you see it, oh, I love this. This is nice. Ooh.
Again, it's like, okay, so your expectation right here is Superman's going to come pick up Billy? No.
Jimmy Olsen.
Jimmy. Sorry. Superman's going to come pick up Jimmy and save him. He's just going. Your expectation right now is he's going to go from person to person to person and save everybody.
Again,
That's cool.
That is again. They just built a big ass model and just put a ton of water behind it. And again, water is one of those things that's very tough to shoot in miniature because you can't miniaturize water. Yeah. It's going to look the size it's going to look. So you kind of have to treat it with soap crystals to try to get that foaming sensation.
Wow, it looks good. Looks really good. I mean, with this style of, for the most part, except for some of the flying, you can really kind of let go of the all the bad stuff that's you can let go of it and say, okay, this is what's happening. You suspend your disbelief. You're not like, oh, that you couldn't with that shot.
Yeah, you can see right the lighting between Superman and the background was just a little bit off. But again, for '79, that was some pretty good stuff. And again, if that was probably a front projection. They've basically got Superman, or they've got Christopher Reeve on a line or some sort of harness, and they basically timing the camera movements to the movements of the background.
I really wonder what it would have been like to see this. It's one of those things I wish I could go back in time and actually see this in the theater for the first time and just really experience it in its time.
Oh, I did that. I was actually 12 years old. My mom Actually, I spent the night with my uncle Lauren and Aunt Sue, and he drove me to Santa Rosa the next day, and I got to see it in a really good theater too, with a good sound system.
Now, here's an amazing theory. This is what I was talking about earlier when, I was just kind of blew my mind. It's like, okay, so we've set up this expectation. Superman is going to save everybody. Just go from point to point to point to point to point here. Your expectation is set this whole time. Your expectation is set. Something bad happens to Lois. Superman's there to save her. And it just really throws this wonderful, dramatic curveball here. Where, okay, he's going to go somewhere, but something bad is going to happen to Lois. Superman's set up with this moral dilemma here where, is it the greatest good for the greatest people, or does he go for the person he loves?
And here is where we get into the one part of the film where the model work is a little on the weak side.
I'm trying to remember this.
Oh, there it is, right there.
It looks like a train track.
Yeah, it does. Again, this probably was one of those things that was shot at a point during production where they were just rushing to get the first film finished. Because keep in mind that Donner at this point was basically shooting 2 movies at once.
What was the other one?
Superman 2.
Oh, he was. Oh, okay.
Yeah, basically to keep the cost down. He was basically shooting stuff for Superman and Superman 2 at the same time. So. Which is by the time he finished this film, he had 70% of Superman 2 done. Then he had a falling out with the Salkinds, and they fired him, and they brought in Richard Lester to direct.
I didn't realize they were filming at the same time. What a really smart decision on their part.
Yeah, it kind of worked. They actually did the same thing a few years earlier with the Three Musketeers and the Four Musketeers, where they basically made 2 movies at the same time. It's a good way to atomize costs. It's probably the same reason the Wachowski brothers shot the last 2 Matrix movies back to back.
I kind of wish it would have took more time, though.
Okay, that's another commentary track for another time. Okay.
Same with Back to the Future 2 and 3. Uh-oh.
Yeah. An interesting note, of course, was actually shot at Pinewood, and they actually had poor Margot Kidder in that thing for weeks shooting that thing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they just dumping Fuller's Earth and pebbles into it for days.
No wonder she went crazy. Okay, here it is. Here's the big payoff. Here it comes. All right. He's going to save her. He saved everyone else. He saved the town. He saved Jamie, blah, blah, blah. He saved the Earth. Everything's fine. All the missiles are gone.
We still have fallout, but we're not dealing with that.
Yeah, it'd fall out, schmal out. He can inhale it and then breathe it back out into space or something,
Beautiful example of neocon thinking, by the way. It's just radioactivity. We can blow it out. We'll fine. We'll just develop gills.
We just need giant fans. We're going to put our resources into giant fans.
And
then... Oh. Okay, and then... Ultimate expectation terrorism. And just as a small... I was like, okay... He's going to, breathe life into her, and she's going to start coughing, and she's going to be fine. This is great, too. This is great right here.
I just love the way he's looking at it. It's just,
It looks like potter soil. And, in any other movie, this would be the cheesy part where she just the abyss scene where she just randomly decided to be alive.
You're talking about the scene where Ed Harris finally gets... I actually like that scene.
I do too. But, it's like... But no, she's dead.
Dead as dead can be, and you would think that is the end of it, but...
Which is the most powerful... It's like, I was, I'm a kid, I'm like, oh my God, they actually did it. They actually... went for it, They actually brought some element of genuine tragedy, and they break your expectation, which never happens in movies. You never see this kind of thing. Oh, is he going to breathe life into her?
Nope. Just a simple. Oh, and that nice little moment there. He's afraid of
hurting her. Yeah. I'm kind of emotional right now, honestly. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it's about to get spoiled.
And they just really treat this moment well. You know, the soft music, the taking their time with it. You really get inside Superman's head here. And now, okay, so here's the thing.
Oh, but first I gotta say this brief beat right here that Reeve plays just so beautifully. He just cannot believe it, and just that little moment. Yep. Now it goes wrong.
Okay, so that's a great scene, but
No, I was gonna say the mic was too close to your mouth.
so here's the thing. You watch a movie about superheroes, like any kind of comic book movie, anything, and you suspend your disbelief about the powers that the person has. You just accept that he flies. You accept that as beams of heat come out of his eyes. You accept that he can
Mike's
see
too
through
far away.
he can see through these things because that's the premise that's set up. However, these principles still happen within the realms of physical reality. You haven't changed the laws of physics at all. And so how Superman deals with this is by flying well past light speed, by the way, back against the direction of the Earth by wind drag, I guess. He reverses the direction that the Earth is rotating, and instead of what would actually happen, which is the continents would fly off, the world would just fall apart, everything would go crush, gravity would reverse itself, all those things, somehow time goes backwards. Which is the worst and most unfortunate Deus Ex Machina, because it just completely undermines
He's right, exactly, because he could do this at any time. He's a couple days later on the rent. Fine, he'll just spin backwards. It does mar the movie, I'm afraid. It's the one part of the movie that it didn't bother me when I was 12, but I wasn't that sharp a 12-year-old.
It just really makes me mad because it undermines that dramatic development of, wow, something actually happened. And he just, reverses it and sets it backwards, and he's going to go fix it all again. And he can do that every time something bad happens. He can do that, and it has nothing to do with physical reality. And if you know anything about physics or you know anything about it, it's like, wait, they just completely made all this stuff up, just because they didn't have a way to fix it. And it just ruins.
Yeah, it's the one weak part of the movie, and I remember reading an interview with Singer where he basically said, "Yeah, this part of the movie doesn't really work," but we shine past it. She's alive. Actually, I got to point out one interesting thing is Tom Mankiewicz mentioned on the commentary track is that there was actually a good line here. Originally the car was going to stay wrecked, and Lois basically had a line where she said to Superman, "Flip you to see who brings it back to Avis."
Oh.
I chuckled, but that's me.
Cute. That is cute.
Yeah.
But, they just arbitrarily just ruin everything that was set up here. And that's just so unfortunate. And this level of Deus Ex, it's not even Deus Ex Machina. It's just
it's him Ex Machina.
Yeah, Superman Ex Machina. But, it's just you just change the rules arbitrarily. There's no justification. There's no support for it, and you can do that. If you get away with that, you could just get away with that with any movie. And you see that in a lot of the new Spider-Man 2. Oh my gosh, that was possibly almost the worst example of it. But it's just really, really, really too bad that this movie, which is so great all the way through, just took that direction.
Yeah. Well, the good news is it is almost over, and we've just got this last scene coming up where we finally get to see Lex bald, which will be nice.
Can you, can you actually retroactively arrest someone for trying to destroy the world?
Yeah, you can. Oh, the great unveiling. He's serving notice to you. These walls. And again, as annoying as they get, it's even worse in Superman 2, the Lester version. It's even worse.
I do like that he asked for Australia. I always liked that he asked for Australia. That I always thought that was great. That's kind of a neat him getting out of that scene.
And of course, the last great iconic shot of the entire movie, him just going up over the sunrise. And again, I gotta give full props to Mr. Williams. That, dun da da. An interesting story about the score is he was talking to Tom Mankiewicz one time, and he said, "What is your goal? What do you want me to do with the score?" And he said, "It's the Super Bowl, the year the film's been released, and they're playing the theme at halftime." And sure enough, it did happen.
It's really good.
Yeah. And you can see it because it's like you can almost hear Superman. He actually got the name. And anyway, that's it. That is the movie, Superman. The credits have just started. So, Jake, how do you feel? Do you feel better about the movie or worse?
Well, I actually feel a lot better about the movie. There's two sides of it. One, it's like, I've been so tainted by the end of the movie, I couldn't go back because of how frustrating I've always been by it. But at the same time, so much of the other movie is so great. It's so good to go back and see it with kind of fresh eyes and just see how beautifully done it is. But it almost makes it worse. It's like it's such a beautiful gem of a movie, and it's just
it's got this huge flaw in the middle of it. And you just got to point out some of the technical people. Stuart Freeborn was was the head makeup man who was also responsible for the apes in 2001.
Oh my god.
Zoran Persic, he's the guy who came up with the Zoptic special effects which helped with the flying sequences. He was the one who was...
Jeffrey Hellman worked on... I was just going to make some up. But
oh, shit! Trying to fake me out, weren't you, Sparky?
The second John Barry, second unit director, was
But that was actually John Barry, the production designer. Again, he was probably getting ready because he was eventually going to try to direct Saturn III, but he got fired by the producers, and that's just an entirely different story. But again,
Ernest Walter was visual coordinator on Midnight Cowboy as well as this.
Are you making that up?
Yeah, I'm just gonna make up facts.
You're just gonna. What are you, the Bush administration? All of a sudden.
No.
Good. I was gonna say.
How do you know I'm not lying?
Because I can see your lips move.
Well, my lips are American lips, and they don't run. My lips don't run against fear and evil and terrorism.
And now it's this would be great if we were doing a commentary.
Aerial photography, Peter Ulrich. He also worked on Firefox. He did the aerial photography for Firefox.
You'd actually know this for a fact. Jake?
I happen to know that. Yeah, of course. Firefox is one of my favorite movies. It's powerful, stunning look at America. Clint Eastwood.
This would be good if we were doing a commentary track for Fahrenheit 9/11, but for Superman, not so much. But
Charles Smits in the USA. He was also in the USA, and
he was one of the sound mixers. You goof! Now you're just making fun of me at this point.
He makes sound for America. I'm not making fun of you. I admire. I honestly, truly admire your level of knowledge. It's. Well, but I can't hang with it. I can't compete it at all. So I have to fake it. You're like trivia contest. You kill me every single time.
Yeah, I wasn't that good at the trivia contest the other night, but that's only because they didn't ask enough.
But you had every movie question down, and we would have lost a lot more points if you weren't there. So
okay, fair enough.
If the guy has to have a movie trivia night, then I'll make sure you're in my corner every single time.
Thank you very much.
Pat O'Reilly, Bill O'Reilly's.
No, he was not. Stop it! Now you're embarrassing yourself.
Unit producer on the O'Reilly Factor. Shh. Yvonne I genuinely really just thought the costumes were amazing.
The costumes were terrific, and especially the Superman costume, which is just such a tough real-world thing to turn off. I mean, again, that's one of the reasons they didn't have spandex in the first two X-Men movies, because they couldn't pull it off. They couldn't pull it off.
They made a really good choice with that. I mean, with X-Men, you can get away with it. You don't need spandex for the X-Men. Batman and Superman are hard because they're bigger icons. With the X-Men, with most Marvel comics, in general, this is kind of how it works. With DC Comics, you're dealing a lot more with mythology. In Marvel Comics, you're dealing with like real-world applications. So the X-Men is
There we go. Optical sequences, Oxford Scientific Films. They were the ones who were responsible for some of the visuals we saw during the space travel sequences.
Brian King was a person. Terry Hill and John, do you know about those guys?
God, they mentioned it on the commentary track probably early on, but I forgot.
Oh, yeah.
But there's the cast. Again, wonderful cast. And again, we will be seeing Terrence Stamp in Superman 2, preferably the Richard Donner cut. I'm sorry, I'm not going to be in town when that comes out, so we could do commentary on that. That would be interesting.
One day.
One day.
You can do it like a phone commentary, maybe? I don't know.
Oh, God. A phone bill would go... You'd have to call me because you have the unlimited...
That's true.
Yeah. And again, I gotta say, I'm just loving... I'm sounding like a broken record, but I'm just loving the Williams score right now. That's...
You know what I kind of wish they had, though? I wish they had some DJ scratching on it. Because I think that would be pretty tight. You know, like...
You
give it some more bass, you know.
Maybe see Superman doing some popping and locking. And because he's Superman and he's invulnerable, he could come up with some great positions. Are you done now?
Oh, sorry. Can you read my mind? Music.
Lyrics by Leslie Bricusse, who also worked with Anthony Newley, who did the score for Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
Yeah, that song was a really bad idea. Just the inner thoughts. I mean, I'm glad she didn't sing it, or I'm glad it wasn't sung, but still, just leave well enough alone.
Yeah, all right. Fair enough. But anyway, that's it. We're coming up to the end of the thing. We hope you folks enjoy this as much as we've enjoyed doing it.
You know, honestly, if you're listening by this point, I applaud you. You know, you can contact me or Richard on either of our sites and just mention that you were... We should give a code word that if they listen this far, they can mention it.
Say pancakes.
Pancakes, yeah. If you mention pancakes, we'll send you $1 in the mail because you've earned it for listening to us this far.
You realize if suddenly my hit count goes up and people actually listen to the whole thing, we could be out a ton of money.
It'll be worth it. You know, I really doubt if we give everybody who listens to this $1, I think at the far end most, we might each be out $5.
I hope you're right, Sparky. I hope you're right. Anyway, I am he who is Richard Jensen.
I am the other one that is Jake Merriman.
And thank you for listening and have a very pleasant day.
And make sure you vote.
Democrat. Remember, this. If you're listening to this before the election, vote Democrat. Thank you. Good night.